Good morning and welcome to the May 6, 2022 State Board of Education meeting. Board members, please engage your microphones before speaking and turn them off when you are done speaking. Please note that the board members may be using their cell phones and laptop computers to access the agenda and information related to this meeting. Live web streaming is available through the State Board of Education website. The May 6th, 2022 State Board meeting will now come to order. Andrea, please call the roll.
Patsy Kojans.
Here.
Lisa Fricke.
Here.
Patty Goebbels.
Here.
Jacqueline Morrison. Kirk Penner.
Here.
Maureen Nichols.
Here.
Robin Stevens.
Here.
Deborah Neary. Commissioner Bloomstead.
Here.
6 present, 2 absent.
Thank you. Please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Agenda item 1.3, information regarding the Open Meetings Act is posted as you enter the room from the main entrance doors. The Open Meetings Act is also posted on the State Board of Education website. Agenda item 1.4, meeting protocol. Commissioner?
Yeah, welcome everyone, and thanks for being in attendance today. I was going to say it's been right as rain. It was nice to see rain out here, quite frankly. And so thanks for being here. Look forward to the presentations and the special guests. I get to do some special presentations. Appreciate the public being here to participate as appropriate when we get to public comment period. Just kind of respect one another's needs around you. We got plenty of space here today, so thanks for being here.
Agenda item 2.1, Commissioner?
Yeah, so I'll be brief on this and trying to introduce our first special presentation and our first guest here, but it's really good to have students from North Platte Public Schools that are leaders in FFA, and I'll go ahead and have you come forward if you're ready. I'll say a few more things. First of all, really exciting always to have some student presentations. I'm excited about this, and I learned North Platte just started an FFA program just 4 years ago, and so we have some experienced experts in front of us to tell us about that program, and appreciate them being with us today. So I'll turn it over to you, and thanks again.
Good morning, State Board and guests. My name is Ellie Fisher, current president of the North Platte FFA chapter, and I am a senior this year. I am going to attend Chadron State College next year to major in biology with an emphasis in pre-med in hopes to become a pediatric surgeon. I am honored to be the first group of students to graduate with 4 years as part of the chapter. I have gained many skills like communication and leadership that have influenced my decision in medicine. I'm going to talk about how our chapter got started.
Hi, I'm Emily Hansen. I'm a junior at North Platte High. I am currently the treasurer, and next year I will be the president. And I'm going to be talking about how much our chapter has grown over the last 4 years.
Hi, I'm Jacob Henry. I'm a sophomore, current parliamentarian, and I'm going to be the next year's secretary. Our future is bright, and I'm here to tell you about it.
I just like to start off by saying our chapter is brand new. This is only our 4th year in existence. So with all of the experiences that we have had throughout the past 4 years, it all brings us back to the national FFA motto, which is learning to do, doing to learn, earning to live, and living to serve. So with our first year in 2018, there was a lot of uncertainty, and we were really just trying to figure everything out. There was not anyone at the school to ask or go based on information because we were so new. So with our first year, a problem that we struggled with was membership. There is 1,200 kids at our school. 115 of them were in ag class that year, and only 25 of them were in our FFA chapter. And so we came up with some membership activities, like we did a slip and slide kickball, and that was fun. It got a lot of members to join FFA and see what FFA is all about. And then another problem that we had was fundraising. Since we were so brand new, we literally started with a $0 budget. So we implemented some fundraisers to get some money to pay dues and such. And so we came up with a Feed the Farmer banquet, which is a hired hand auction and a silent auction, and we feed dinner to local community members. And in the 2018-19 school year, we raised $11,000. And we did this banquet in the 1920 school year and raised $12,000 there. But we also implemented another fundraiser called the Corn Drive, which is where FFA members go out to farmers' fields during harvest, and we gather corn into a semi-truck and take it to the elevator as a fundraiser. So together for 1920 school year, we raised $17,000. And then the global pandemic hit in 2021, so we were only able to do the corn drive and not the banquet due to social distancing, so we raised $6,000. And then we came back with full force in 2021 and 2022, and we raised $45,000 with the corn drive and the banquet together. And so we are currently have $85,000, which we will use for future endeavors. Emily, will you talk about our growth?
We currently this year had 51 members in the program, and we added a second advisor. We offer 12 ag classes and have 325 students that are enrolled in our ag classes this year. And with 2 advisors, that allows us to offer more ag classes. But a big part of FFA is giving back to our community. We were such a new chapter that we had to rely on our community for a lot of support. So now we are trying to show our respect and give back to them. One thing that we have done is built an outdoor classroom at Buffalo Early Learning Center. So far, we have built rock climbing walls. We put cement pavers down and put tanks over them, and helped the kids build or plant plants, and so they could watch them grow and teach them a little bit about how to plant the plants and stuff like that. And then on Monday, we are supposed to go over and build a live tree house. Not really sure what that looks like yet, but gonna happen. We do Think a Farmer banquet, where we cook hamburgers and put together a sack lunch and deliver them to a farmer ranch that has helped our chapter in numerous different ways. We also do connecting chapters, where we go into different elementary schools around North Platte and just teach them about ag and how important ag is in the world today, and different opportunities, and just a little bit about what we do at the high school. And we also get to bring our super cute bunnies that we have, and that's probably their favorite part. And in 2019, we donated over $2,000 to farmers and ranchers that were affected by the floods. And COVID hit FFA pretty hard in 2020 because FFA is a very hands-on learning experience. So when we can't do anything hands-on, it was difficult to keep growing, but we did. And this year, we came back full force, doing everything we could. The FFA team, or the officer team, got to attend National Convention in Indianapolis with 67 other FFA members. And we just got to network with a bunch of different FFA chapters around the United States. This last April, we attended State Convention, where 22 of our members competed in 7 different competitions. And we also got to just see a bunch of different chapters around the state. We competed in a lot of different district competitions. We compete in career development events that range from anywhere from ag business and floriculture to meat judging and welding and anything you can think of between. I'm sure there's a competition for it. We also can compete in leadership development events. Those are your speaking events. So we compete anything from ag demo to employment skills, where you interview and have to create a resume. And any speaking competition between there about ag is in there. I've personally competed in 5 events. We also get to attend Husker Harvest Days, Cattlemen's Classic, and the Pathway to Careers Conference. And those are all events where we get to go out and learn about ag industries that are out there and careers that we might want to pursue after high school. Now, Jake, tell us about how bright our future is going to be.
With our large support base, we have basically can just go as far as we want for our future, as big as we can dream. We're really looking at getting our SAEs, supervised agricultural experiences, trying to get those more in depth and more kids involved in that. Myself, I do a SAE project that is my own cattle herd. I get to keep track of the numbers of cattle, what I feed them, how much I feed them, and all the shots I give them. Taught me a lot of, and still teaching me a lot of skills, such as responsibility of keeping track of things and bookkeeping, which I had never done before and was really good for me to get figured out. We'd also like to do a lot of hands-on experiences, such as a greenhouse. We'd really like a greenhouse just because it would open up a lot more classes. We can also grow food in there and sell it out of the greenhouse to the community and kind of use it as a fundraiser. We'd also like an outdoor classroom, similar to the one at the Buffalo Early Learning Center, except more agriculture and FFA based. There's a lot of chapters that have used barns in the past and have had cattle or other animals in it. And we'd really like to have our own one so children can go out there and see what agriculture's like, and someone that doesn't have a 40-acre field in their backyard can have a few cows and a stall in there and have our own little lab area. We started our own junior high ag club. It's really gotten a lot of younger kids involved in the FFA movement. It's showing them that FFA is not just future farmers of America, but it is over 20% of the jobs, which is 1/4 of the jobs in Nebraska, are ag-based. It's showing them that they can be anything from a lawyer in the courtroom defending a farmer or a farmer out there planting their seeds. There's also a lot of degrees, or only one degree, that you can get in middle school, and that is a discovery degree. And we'd really like to give the children an opportunity to get that degree and get an early experience on with FFA. We'd like to thank our chapter, or as a chapter, we'd like to thank administration and teachers.
State organization in Nebraska Department of Education.
And the National FFA Organization for supporting our brand new chapter and continuing this amazing organization. Does anyone have any questions?
We're open to questions that have to do with FFA and their membership and what they've gained from it. Go ahead, Robin.
First of all, thank you very much for being here. Last month we were part of, unintentionally, we became part of your state convention because our meetings were right there with you as well. I just have hopefully a simple question. You mentioned that you were in 5 competitions. I'm assuming were the rest of you involved in a competition? If you just list those for us, you don't have to go into a lot of detail, but that would be fun for me to hear about.
Well, I did expedition speaking and welding, livestock judging, and then I also set up a few teams for meat judging.
At the district level, I've competed in every contest you can, basically. That ranges from vet science, food science, floriculture, agronomy, environmental and natural resources speaking, and then at the state level, I competed in agronomy.
I competed in ag business, natural resources, floriculture, agronomy, and I did an ag demo for my LDE.
Thank you very much.
Maureen?
This is wonderful. Thanks for all the work that each of you have put in and your members, the members in your group. But I hope one of the things that you're helping to instill is the importance of future ag teachers, because I just read an article this week that was sent out to us about the shortage of ag teachers, not just in Nebraska, but the nation, and how important our ag teachers are. And so do all you can in helping to promote that as well, to say, we need this, and look how we've grown. So, but thank you for all you're doing. You're great leaders for our future.
Any other questions? Yes, Lisa?
You mentioned some of the things you do with the community, which I think is awesome, and children. My question is, are you able to partner with some of the businesses in town or around town with your organization?
Yes. Our banquet has a lot of business opportunities that support us, and then we've actually planted flowers at Nebraska Land Bank, and I can't say enough how grateful the businesses in this community are. They are supportive, and they are not hesitant, and they always say yes. So I'd say, like, they are great, and we are a chapter, and we are growing because of them.
Anybody else? Okay. I want to hire you as a fundraiser for education in Nebraska. If you can raise $85,000 for that, I think that you maybe a little less for us, but that would be great for the students of Nebraska. I have something to present to you, but first of all, thank you very much, while the public can hear me, for being here and celebrating what's really wonderful about Nebraska schools and Nebraska students. We appreciate you.
As Patsy presents those, they also told me, I think all 51 members of their chapter are working in some other type of opportunity too outside of their FFA, so pretty impressive. Yeah, they are.
I'd love to see the advisors recognized. Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
Mr. Sweberg, where are you? Are you in the room? Okay. And the other person, I don't know the name. Okay, all right, will you come just around so everybody can see you more than your backs? Yeah. Programs like this don't just happen. They take wonderful, dedicated teachers And I bet if I questioned the 3 students that were here, they would have all kinds of wonderful things to say about you. But what I want to say is thank you for contributing to Nebraska education and the students we all want to succeed. Thank you. Agenda item 2.2. Commissioner?
Yeah, and I don't know if Lane is going to come forward and do a little of the introduction. Lane Carl come forward, and Tim Vanderheiden as well. So he can go ahead and come forward. This is a little presentation on just one of the examples of how ESSER funds are making a difference across the state, and I'll let Lane do the introductions overall here.
Good morning, board. Attached in Spark is sort of a little explanation about this update, but being able to share with you the impact that the investments that we've been making over the past year and a half of these ESSER dollars is a highlight. It's always hard to follow students, but we wanted to share a story, again, that is not unique to Nebraska. This is something that we've seen where schools do not qualify for ESSER funds, because either, as we know in that attachment, they don't receive title funds or don't have a hot lunch program, or both. So there are 5 schools in 5 districts in our state that did not receive ESSER dollars. And so we, in April and June, came to you and got your approval to make some of those investments so that we could share some of our statewide dollars with those 5 schools, 5 districts. Commissioner and I had the opportunity to visit McPherson County with Superintendent Vanderheiden, and it was just such a nice visit. And so we asked him here today to share a little bit about how these dollars have impacted his school. So, Tim, thanks for being here.
Thank you. First of all, as I was sitting back there listening to the reason we're all here, listening to those students, 2 things came to mind. If you want the story of your schools told, the best people to do it are our students. And they did a wonderful job, and they are in great hands with Mr. Swedberg. I know him. He's a quality individual, so that program is in good hands. And the other thing goes back to my performing days, that when you were performing, you never wanted to follow youth or an animal act. And so, anyway, again, thank you for the opportunity to come and talk to you. Many familiar faces. Robin and I have had many conversations. And so, again, we appreciate your support. First of all, I want to share a little bit about McPherson County Schools. We are the smallest district in the state. Our county has 401 individuals in it. The town itself, as of 2020, we have a population of 78 just in the town of Tryon. So the demographics kind of dictate where we're going. 98% of our tax revenues that we bring in come from agricultural land. So when we start talking funding and taxes and such like that, we really look at that when we start looking at our ag lands. We have 58 students this year. A third of them are opt-in from North Platte. So we have a bus that comes in to Cody Park every morning, and then the students ride almost 40 miles to and from school. We have 3 elementary staff. We have one, she is in her 41st year of teaching, and she teaches K through 2. And I mean, she is a master teacher. You know, a lot of people in our district will go to Miss Crow and they will ask, okay, this is what I'm looking at. What do you recommend? And sometimes she pulls out the old fundamentals that sometimes we forget, and she just does naturally. We also have a 3-4 classroom and a 5-6 classroom. We have 11 secondary staff, 2 of which are of the transitional programs from UNK that teach our ELA and our math. Excuse me, not our math, our business and marketing entrepreneurship that we started last year. We have another non-traditional. He is our maintenance person, but through the optional certificate that's available, he's able to teach our woods. And so, we're very creative in getting our staff out there. We had advertised 3 years for a science teacher and no applicants. And so last year we reached out and we ended up hiring a teacher from the Philippines on a J1 visa. And so we have her for another 2 years at least. And then our Spanish one too, we bring in on distance learning from Perkins County. So again, we're creative what we do, and we're lucky in Nebraska. There's a lot of partnerships and different ways that we can get some things taken care of. Going on to our ESSER funds, they came in very timely manner. We do not have a title program. We do not have a hot lunch program. There's 2 districts in the state that I'm aware of, us and then Arthur County. And so we did not qualify for the first rounds, and thankfully, in your wisdom, there was the state set aside for those schools that maybe didn't meet that. ESSER 2, we got a little over $37,000 in that first round. And that allowed us, at that particular time, it was awarded and our well went out. We are not on public water, and so our high school, everything's run off of our well. And so we ended up having to replace our well. We were able to do that because without the water, we wouldn't have been able to keep things cleaned, sanitized, all the other hygiene issues that go with it. Then we were also able to use some of those monies towards a bus. Wasn't a new one, but it was new to us bus. And so that allowed us to spread some of our students out in our transportation. So we greatly appreciate that. We also are using the funds remaining from ESSER 2 and our ESSER 3 for professional development in math and in ELA. We are also using it. We are going through our review system now for curriculum. We've identified our high-quality instructional materials in math. We'll be using those funds to provide our new curriculum materials, and then also the PD that will go along with it in math this next year. We will be doing the same with our ELA starting next year, and we will use the balance of those funds then to help with those curricular instructional materials. We were hoping that we were going to be able to use some of it to update our fiber that runs from our high school to the elementary. When we got the price on that, it was beyond our funds and beyond the funds that we were able to get from you. So we stuck up another Wi-Fi transmitter, and it works great as long as the wind's not blowing, the dust isn't blowing, and the rain and the snow, all those good things that we know that could affect it. So a couple other things we did with it. We did update some of our Wi-Fi access points in our high school and in our elementary so they could withstand the load when we get into testing. And we also purchased 3 iMac production machines that are used at the high school in our marketing, also for our agribusiness and our art, to where students are using the drones that we've got to produce commercials, survey agricultural land, and again, trying to expose themselves to kind of an entrepreneurial spirit when they leave. What are some of the things they're able to produce before they leave? And so, this is what we've done so far. We've been very stingy on what we have appointed those funds to, because without them, we would not be able to do the things that we are doing now. And when we sat down with the committee of what our needs are, these were the things that they said, well, without it, we wouldn't be able to do those now. So again, I want to thank you very much for this opportunity to tell a little bit of the story of McPherson County. And Commissioner and Lane, I appreciate you guys coming out. That was a great conversation. having more and more people coming out to western Nebraska and seeing our schools and listening is great. I know we were pretty much bound during the pandemic, and we couldn't go out and do that, but the commissioner and Lane are doing an excellent job trying to get out there and listen. So thank you.
Board, if you have any questions, please ask them now. Mr. Stevens?
Thank you. Tim, thank you especially for being here. As you know, and we all are finding out more and more that we're in the midst of a major issue with teacher shortages. I was especially interested in your custodian also serving as your woods person. Can you just briefly tell me how you worked with the department on getting that to happen?
Well, luckily that was in place when I got there. He had just started the year prior. But he has enough specialty certificates and training that makes him a specialist in several different things. He's licensed to test our water. He's licensed to do so many things, and he's been trained to do some wood projects and such. So because some of his certificates, we've been able to work with NDE and the certification to get him to help out. Otherwise, we wouldn't be having a woods program.
Tim, I'm interested in knowing how many buses you run to pick up the students. You have the one that comes to North Platte.
Yes. Yes, we just run the one bus.
Okay.
Other than that, everybody gets to school on their own. We run another one after activities, and we are co-opted with Stapleton, so we're the Sandhills Valley Mavericks. And so when those activities are done, we load up Stapleton and McPherson County students and bring them all down to North Platte. So that's where we're looking at right now. We would love to be able to run different parts of our county to pick up more students. Financially, it just does not make sense right now. And if we went to one part of the county, we feel we would need to go to all parts of the county. And we have one hired bus driver, and he's 70 years old. He loves it. He's great. But when he's sick, it's all hands on deck. My maintenance person also drives bus, and they're the only ones that are certified to run a route bus.
I don't know that people in Nebraska who aren't from the western part of the state understand the geography in terms of distances that some students drive to get to school. Can you just give us an example of the longest distance that a student drives or parents drive them to get to school?
Oh gosh, that kind of changes, but I think right now the longest distance we have someone driving is between 40 miles. And over half of that on sandhill roads. So if anybody that's familiar with sandhills, it's parallel cow paths. And then that'll get you to your gravel road, to your oil. The other thing that a lot of people don't understand with our students, and I was talking with a couple of our students the other day, especially with the wildfires, we have 7th and 8th graders and freshmen that are on fire duty at night when thunderstorms come in. Now what that means is that they're given a water truck of their own, and they go out and they sit out on the highest hill in certain parts of their ground. And they're given the responsibility, if lightning strikes, to radio and then go to start pouring water up wherever that is. So we start talking about the responsibilities our youth take. That just kind of puts a whole new dynamic. So when you have a student that comes in and looks tired, well, they've been up all night, making sure that their family ranch is still liable. And then, of course, during calving season, that's another thing with it. And they have a lot of fun stories to share with that. and some stories aren't necessarily fun. They might lose their favorite cow in it, and so then you're helping them during the day. So, but it is a nice environment for our kids, and as North Platte's FFA says, you know, they're a community. They're a family. Everybody rallies behind it. Our community rallies behind our school, and it's just a great place.
Lisa?
Thank you. It's very interesting to be reminded of what it's like in western Nebraska. My question is, you mentioned you could go to different communities, but you've chosen not to at this time. I'm wondering, what's your capacity as far as taking on new students if you were to do that?
At one time, about 10, 15 years ago, the student population was about 125. So, I mean, we can easily take on another 100 students. Right now, our student-teacher ratio is 5 to 1. So we can bring more into our classrooms. As a whole, I think our largest class right now is our freshman class, and we have 11 students in that. Thank you. Yes.
Any further questions? Thank you so much for being here, and it sounds to me like you made a wonderful use of all the money that that was provided to you, and it would be wonderful if we could give you even more, because I think you're doing it in a very responsible, thoughtful way. So thanks for sharing that information for us. We're
Well,
proud to have you here today.
Thank you very much, and I appreciate it.
Agenda items 3.1 through 3.2. Commissioner?
Yeah, and, I'll be very brief here. I'm going to speak a little bit more when we get to another agenda item, but just our routines. We didn't have any items requested to be removed from consent agenda, so we'll take that up in due order here. I don't believe Ryan had anything for a board operations or information report. Underneath, I think it's item 6 point something anyway. I'll give a little bit of overview on the appraisal. I'll call it the self-appraisal process anyway in that particular time, but otherwise I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Well, it's me, President's Report. I can do that. Okay, here we are in North Platte, Nebraska Board, just as we imagined when we decided that we wanted to travel to different parts of the state so that our constituents knew that we cared about students and people all across the state. Some of us took tours of the schools yesterday, of 2 schools, and were very impressed with North Platte Elementary and the middle school that they visited us. Some of us arrived early Wednesday and attended meetings to prepare for the next day, and some of us arrived late on Wednesday to prepare for other different meetings the next day. On Thursday and on Friday, some of us rushed in to make it to the business meeting, and then to meetings after the business meeting. Some of us could only make it virtually, but the truth is, almost all of us made it to North Platte, Nebraska. The staff, the board, and the commissioner, we made it. We wanted all of you to know that this area of our state matters to us. Board members, I am so proud of you for the last few months of the work that you've been doing and what you've accomplished. The committee work operated by our own board individuals has been something wonderful to watch. I think we've accomplished more in the last couple of months of reinventing and creating and revising materials that have long been left untouched. And so if you are a chair of one of those committees or working on one of those committees, know that you have been noticed by your president, and that I admire the work that you've done. I have yet to mention that the work that the State Board of Education does just as an in-house work on policy handbooks and that sort of thing. But if you keep your ear to the ground, constituents, you'll see that many of our board members travel around the state and speak to groups and talk about the state board and talk about students and educators and teacher shortages. They offer their time for no pay, but they offer their time because they truly care about what happens to education in Nebraska, and they're truly proud of the system that we have created in Nebraska. So when you see a state board member, think about that, the positive things that they're doing. Presently, we're working on teacher certification and recruitment. You'll hear us talk about that. The staff and board and commissioner also do good work for the students of Nebraska, and we couldn't do anything without their support. And they're in front of the scenes, but more importantly, they're behind the scenes. You can run to them in the early morning hours and ask them to make you copies like I did this morning. I want you to know that the State Board of Education does not believe that we are perfect, but we are a work in progress, and we are working hard to represent you well and to take care of education in Nebraska. I'm asking you to keep on keeping on. I'm so very proud of this board and to be your president. Do not allow discouragement to stop the work you are doing or the negativity that we sometimes confront to set us back. Focus on the positivity of the people that come to us and are appreciative of the work we do. We must move on and seek the best for students and teachers and administrators that we work for. The future depends on our efforts to collaborate and to work. So move on, and thank you very much for being all that you are. That ends my president's report. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Thank you, Patty. Is there a second?
I second.
The motion
Whoops, go ahead.
was made by Patty Goebbels and seconded by Maureen Nichols.
Per board policy, there is no discussion on the motion to approve the consent agenda. Andrea, will you please call the roll?
Fricke,
Yes.
Neary, Penner,
Yes.
Goebbels,
Yes.
Stevens,
Yes.
Morrison, Nichols,
Yes.
Kojons,
Yes,
6 yes, 2 absent.
the motion passed. Agenda item 6.1. Vice Chair Robin Stevens, will you provide a report from the Executive Committee meeting?
Yes, Madam Chair. Could I ask for just a very brief shout out to a few of those people that you mentioned in your discussion about the tours that were provided? Would you mind if I identified some people?
Mr. Stevens, that would be wonderful.
Okay. The superintendent at North Platte St. Patrick's, Kevin Dodson, the principal at McDade, Pam Wood, the superintendent of schools at North Platte High School, North Platte Schools, Ron Hansen, Stuart Simpson, board president Skip Altig, the people who really did the work was the principal at Madison Middle School, which is a 6th grade facility, and that's Robin Vale. And then Buffalo Elementary Learning Center, who is not only the principal at that area, but also the special ed person, and that is Peggy Ramchek. So I just really felt that they did a marvelous job, spent a lot of time with us, so I just wanted to give them a quick shout out, so thank you.
Thank you, Robin, for identifying them. That was really important, I think, to give them credit for their work.
Yeah. The report is a very short report in that we have only 2 major areas, which we will be talking about here very shortly. The meeting was called to order at 9:30 on May 5th, yesterday, by our chair, Patsy Coe-Johns. The committee members present were Lisa Fricke, myself, and Deborah Neary via Zoom. Item 1 on the agenda was the reaffirmation of B20, which is our membership with NASBE. And as I mentioned, that will be an action item. Item number 2 on the agenda was a discussion of the May 6th protocol for the board going into and exiting the executive session and the final closing of the state board meeting. And again, there will be more information on that as the meeting progresses. The president and vice president, myself and Ms. Coe-Johns, will be meeting with the commissioner to summarize and debrief about the executive session after the meeting. With that, I close my report.
Robin, is there a motion on 6.1A?
Yes, Madam Chair. I move to reaffirm State Board Bylaw number 20, B20, board membership in the NASBE Association.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
The motion was made by Robin Stevens and seconded by Patty Goobels.
Is there any discussion on the motion? Oops.
Yeah, that's
Yes.
fine. Just to clarify, Robin, this is the National Association of State Boards of Education, which differs from the National Association of School Boards, which called parents domestic terrorists last year.
Excellent.
Thank you.
I'm glad that you pointed that out.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, Andrea, will you please call the roll? Oops, did you have a question? Nope. Okay. Andrea, will you please call the roll?
Neary, Stevens,
Yes.
Fricke,
Yes.
Nichols,
Yes.
Googles,
Yes.
Morrison, Penner,
Yes.
Coe-Johns,
Yes,
6 yes, 2 absent.
the motion passed. 6.1B, Commissioner, would you provide your update and your self-appraisal?
Yeah, and one of the things I always think about is I could give you lots of PowerPoint and lots of kind of background. I know I give you a written report that you were able to use as part of the appraisal process, but I thought it'd be good just to share a few thoughts with you, both in the reflection of the last year and a little bit about where we need to go kind of going forward. And I'm going to move this here so I can look a little easier. But number one, first of all, there's just an important process. I talk about this often, the role of the state board in providing representative government, right, for the state of Nebraska. It's a really important part of our processes. My role, and I can go down the historical perspective, but I mean, it used to be an elected state superintendent. And at that point in time, the late into the 30s and the 40s, and as they were building up to it, the elected state superintendents of that time said this job is really too big for one person to represent people in this setting, and then to effectively manage the expectations of the education system across the state, right? And so I take all of that really to heart, the importance of the board's work, the importance of the commissioner's work, and there are some distinctions, like we have some statutory things. I'm supposed to do X, you're supposed to do Y, but it's really important that we are able to function and work well together, and that's really always been important to me. I'm going to tell you that got a little tougher. Got a little tougher for me, got a little tougher for you, got a little tougher for the state, got a little tougher for how we did that. In the midst of the pandemic, right, when we first hit March, and I think it was March 6th of 2020, that was that first case. We just had gotten done with a state board meeting, and not all of you were on the state board at that time, right? And so we constantly see the changes that are taking place as part of that. The board in April of that year said, Matt, commissioner, but I bet it was Matt, would you make sure to take on, you got to lead in this moment. You have to be able to provide a level of leadership to get us through in these challenging times. And we did that. And I didn't, a lot of people say, well, Matt was out there doing this. No, I was doing it because the board said, go do these things. Make sure that you can lead in these particular moments. And there was a lot of work that just had to get done. We had to reorganize how we thought about meetings. We had to think about the presence of what we were doing. We had a lot of things going on with schools about what they needed for whether it was waivers or flexibilities around what was taking place. And we did that, I think, really effectively. Oddly enough, I think some of the things we did effectively too are keep doing the work that we thought we had scheduled to do, right? And I look at those particular points in time, and I'm not going to talk a lot about health standards, but I want to talk a little bit about that process leading up to those moments. There were some things that get broken in the midst of a pandemic that we didn't know or knew we were going to experience. Part of that was we lost the connection that we needed to have between the board, the public, and myself to ensure that we were going to manage those environments well. I take that responsibility. I just want you to know I take that responsibility for how that plays out. That's my job to help figure that out, right? All of us have this sense of, hey, look, what's really right for education as a system. And we had some great conversations yesterday in committees and otherwise. These are age-old things. What should we teach our kids, right? What should this look like? Our process only works when we're working well on that together. And I take those responsibilities very much to heart, and I have to find ways that we work well together and that we hear and listen and respond to everything that's taking place in any particular setting. But standard setting, rule-making processes, everything else that we do. I reflect on what we've been able to do in that time. Again, tough times. You take the pandemic, you take the kind of the feelings of the distrust that got established in those moments in time. It's been hard on us, right? Our staff, I mean, I got to thank them. I can't go through any of this without thanking them. We also, in that time, about a year ago, a little over a year ago, were displaced from our office space, not due to the pandemic, although it was maybe connected a little bit, but the state office buildings were going to be changed, and we were part of that, hopefully part of that solution. We were the first to move out, and we're probably going to be the last to get set up in that series of dominoes. Our staff have done a remarkable job of trying to balance all of those things in the midst of that. It's not been easy. Like schools, rightly so, need us to play certain roles and help them make sure that we're able to do that work. I appreciated last year the board taking the positions on certain things, including saying, hey, look, now's the time not to do health standards. Now's the time that we're not going to do other rule changes around Rule 10. As we had those conversations, we need to be able to lead in other ways and find ways that we can do that. We also have to kind of reestablish a set of trusts, and I hope not just between you and me, but us together with the stakeholders that we have across the state. It's very important that we find ways to do that. Doesn't mean we all have to agree all the time. I'm not going to, that's not how that works. But we have to have those processes in place that we can do that effectively to lead in the most effective ways. And so I take that responsibility too, right? I mean, you can count on me to keep pushing and thinking of ways that we can do that more effectively all the time. I will tell you, part of that is, that you all have responsibilities in that sense too. I mean, so I think we've had some conversation about what critical friends are. We have these little, hey, look, you did this well or you did that well. I appreciate you taking time to do that, but you're all my critical friends in that. I think I've said that to you before. You have to tell me what's working, Matt, and what's not working, Matt, so I can effectively lead in my role. I'm very, very proud of the state of Nebraska. If you look nationally on what we've done on education in the midst of this pandemic, we did really well. And it wasn't because I did what I did or the board did what they did. It's because at a local level, people were taking the responsibility. I would get interesting phone calls like, gee, Commissioner, do we have to do fire drills when we didn't have kids in school? No, you don't have, it's like, I have this book that maybe I'll find for everybody. It's like called The Death of Common Sense, right? It's like people have to be able to maneuver and provide leadership in different moments. And that gets hard in a collective leadership type of role. Again, I commit that to you. You tell me, how you want to do that work, and we do that work, and we will do it the right way and be able to continue to lead. I really think when you look across the state of Nebraska, so many things to be proud of. It's fun to see FFA kids here. It's fun to see, man, did I miss those things when we weren't able to do them in the fashion that we wanted to be able to do those. And so now I look at it, and it's like we take so many things for granted about how great this education system is, how great of a state this is, how important this place is to, I think, all of us. And so, but it's also a huge, huge responsibility. I have a friend that always says, if you break it, you buy it, right? I'm like, well, I can't afford to buy the whole thing. So the reality is we have to figure out how to do that work really effectively together. As I look kind of into the future, we'll set some goals. I think I'll get a good chance to kind of hear from the board about the types of things that you want to see me grow in and things that you want to do going forward. But there are some things I want to make sure that we're doing. I do think we can make some systems more effective, and I appreciate the investments that you're looking at making and allowed us to begin to make in the process around the systems, data systems, and other things that help us improve our work. I think that's really critically important. One area where I think is extremely important is in dealing with systems-involved youth across the state. It was something I wanted to take on before the pandemic, and we've had a growing number of children that somehow touch whether in foster care, I mean, even in juvenile justice, in any of the state ward settings. We have to make sure that there's responsibilities. Our schools kind of get these students, and sometimes they're just bounced between systems. We have to find a way that we can help stabilize that for those students, but also for those schools. I've had great conversations with our partners all across, from probation to DHHS to the legislators, the governor's office. There's a chance to really provide that and do that better than any other state in the nation. So that's an area in which I think from a policy standpoint, there are policy things that we work on. I know later today we have approval of our rural 18 schools. We have approval of those different settings. Our work with those providers is really important as well. Lives that are changed in those systems when done well, really, it's I think a remarkable thing that you can see kids come through a system that's had all sorts of challenges, and I hear these stories later. I want to do that better, more effectively for the state of Nebraska, more efficiently for the students themselves, right, in those systems. So I see that. I know we are going to talk and continue to talk about teachers and preparing teachers and the workforce issues that we face across the state. We have some work ahead of us. LB 1218 passed. We're working on rule changes and thinking about how we make that system more effective. Great question about the career ed permits, right? That's something we did a few years ago to make it possible for folks with career experience and a chance to be able to teach in our schools. Thinking of ways that we expand opportunities for students we're going to have to think of ways that we expand the approaches to how we train teachers. And I'm excited for that work. I think that's something that we begin to dive into. It's really also, I'll just kind of end on this one, this last piece, I think, of our work ahead of us, and we started these conversations. We built a strategic plan in 2016 and put a 10-year mark on it. Almost all those data that were included there have been interrupted given the pandemic. We have to come back and reset, re-baseline, decide which things are most important. And I think as we look at it, if we have too many things that we're focused on nothing, right? And so going into this next year, I'm anxious to talk to you about how we have some of those focus areas that we can get that particular work done. I thank you as a board for doing the hard, heavy lifting of figuring out what our new committee structure looks like and what that means. I think that's been effective for us. It's helped with communication. I appreciate all of the different contributions that individuals make in these conversations. I thank you for the chance to be the Commissioner of Education in the state of Nebraska. We got always a lot of work. I didn't expect it to be an easy job. Just like my predecessor said before, can't do it on my own. And I think where we sometimes can fall apart is if I try to do it on my own and you try to do it on your own. We got to do that work together. So I thank you for the chance to just share a few thoughts with you. And I didn't do a PowerPoint, and I know you're disappointed by that, but the students do a lot better job on their presentation, and I learned so much from them. But thanks for a chance to just share a few thoughts with you.
Thank you.
Any responses from the board?
Patsy? Yeah. I appreciate you taking responsibility. But I think it's also really important to reiterate that this is a shared responsibility. It's not just your responsibility. As board members, we all are responsible for taking leadership and working collaboratively with you. I have appreciated the opportunities to do that this year and really look forward to all of us continuing to do that.
Thank you, Patty. Anyone else? Let's see, Agenda 6.2. Chair Marie Nichols, please provide a report from the Budget and Finance Committee meeting.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The committee met at 2 o'clock yesterday with committee members Patty Goebel and Kirk Penner in attendance. Jacqueline Morrison was unable to participate. Several staff members were in attendance in the room and via Zoom, along with Commissioner Bloomstead in the room with us. And I want to thank each of these individuals for their participation. We had one consent agenda item, which we've already voted on, which was to give the commissioner the authorization to contract with 3 Pillars Media to create 8 new virtual tours of Nebraska career opportunities. And this work has been going on for several years and is due for an update since the current videos were created back in 2015. The videos will be updated to include current data. NDE has worked collaboratively with the Department of Economic Development on this project. And I will send out to each of you the link if any of you would like to look at any of those videos that are there posted. We had several action items that we'll be going through. One was to accept the 2021 single audit. NDE reviewed the 2021 single audit with the committee. Per NDE, all findings were related to record keeping or operational procedures that have been addressed. There were no asset misappropriation or fraud concerns. The committee supported moving this item for action to the full board. Action item B, approve the use of up to $1,560,000 to fund grants to selected educational service units for preschool through grade 2 support. NDE staff reviewed the need for the additional early childhood support. These grants will be directed to ESUs who will have different options for activities so that they can select which is most helpful to them in their area. ESUs will submit applications that explain the need for these grant funds. Some of the areas that may be considered are coaching, support, age-appropriate assessment strategies, and transition practices. Since these programs will be administered by ESUs, both public and non-public schools may benefit. The committee supported moving this item forward. Action item C, authorize the commissioner to sign an agreement with the Nebraska Department of Health and Human Services. This agreement is to accept funds from DHHS, which is being funded with federal ARP dollars, to support data systems related to early childhood. The data being collected is required by law. These funds will be used to pay for a professional record system to be developed by 2 programmers for 4 months initially to develop this system. The committee supported moving this item forward to the full board for action. Action item D, authorize the commissioner to enter into a new contract with the Office of Chief Information Officer, OCIO, for staff augmentation services in support of the Nebraska Early Childhood Professional Records Systems. And this item is to authorize the contract to spend the funds from DHHS for the purposes noted during the previous action item. The committee supported moving this item to the full board for action. Action item E, authorize the commissioner to contract with the Nebraska Children and Families Foundation to design, implement, support, and evaluate a full-service community schools program focused on rural schools. NDE covered the work to be done with these funds. The purpose of this project is to provide wraparound services for families and districts in rural Nebraska. NCFF will be providing supports as a central navigator for students with additional needs in the areas of childcare, mental health, food services, translation, and connectivity, to name a few. This work is to help bridge gaps, knowing where to find services for students within a community or area that currently lacks the full service supports sometimes needed. This work will be evaluated through a partnership with the University of Nebraska Medical Center. These funds will be allocated based on areas of highest need. The committee supports moving this forward to the full board for action. Action item F, accept the Community Living Traumatic Brain Injury State Demonstration Grant. This item is to allow the commissioner to accept the grant funds. These funds will be used to assist adults that are recovering from traumatic brain injuries, helping them navigate the vocational rehabilitation applications. A portion of the funds will also be used to evaluate data related to individuals with traumatic brain injury. The committee supported moving this item forward to the board for action. Action item G, authorize the commissioner to contract with partners for insightful evaluation, the Brain Injury Alliance of Nebraska, and the Nebraska Department of Health and Human Services. And no further discussion, as this item was covered during the previous action item I just mentioned. The committee supported moving this item forward to the full board for action. We had discussion items on monthly travel expense reports and in-state travel authorization reports, and there was no discussion. We had a dialogue on school finance training, and the committee discussed the need to improve their understanding of school finance since it impacts so much of the work that we do on this committee. The committee discussed the desire to complete this training in smaller segments with a focus on upcoming financial deadlines or topics that are more moment in the time topics. Topics discussed included TIOSA, budgeting, annual financial reports, cycles of the year, and communication to districts. We had a committee update, mental health supports, where we had dialogue over that, including a report provided by NDE for the committee's review before the June meeting. And Jen McNally of ESU 5 will be presenting to the committee during the June committee meeting on their mental health work and the overall success of the program. And additional information will be presented to the full board in August. Committee members, Kirk or Patty, did I miss anything?
You didn't.
You were all very attentive, thank you. Madam Chair, this concludes my report.
I think that's called a busy committee.
We
Thank
are
you.
a busy committee.
Thank you, thank you. Okay, Maureen, is there any motion on item 6.2C?
Yes, I move to accept the 2021 single audit.
Is there any discussion on this motion?
I'll second that.
Okay, oops, sorry, second. Okay, thank you, Kirk. Okay, is there any discussion on the motion? Andrea, please call the roll.
Morrison, Fricke, Nichols,
Yes.
Goebbels,
Yes.
Kojons,
Yes.
Neary, Stevens,
Yes.
Penner,
Yes.
6 yes, 2 absent.
The motion passes. Maureen, is there a motion on item 6.2D?
Yes. I move to approve the use of up to $1,560,000 to fund grants to selected educational service units for preschool through grade 2 support.
Is there a second? Thank you, Patty. Is there any discussion on this motion? Andrea, please call the roll.
Stevens,
Yes.
Neary, Morrison, Kojons,
Yes.
Penner,
Yes.
Goebbels,
Yes.
Nichols,
Yes.
Fricky,
Yes.
6 yes, 2 absent.
The motion passes. Maureen, is there a motion on item 6.2E?
Yes, I move to authorize the Commissioner to sign an agreement with the Nebraska Department of Health and Human Services.
Is there a second?
Yes, I'll second.
The motion was made by Maureen Nichols and seconded by Patty Goebbels.
Is there any discussion on the motion? And
Goebbels,
Yes.
Neary, Kojons,
yes.
Nichols,
Yes.
Fricky,
Yes.
Stevens,
Yes.
Penner,
Yes.
Morrison, 6 yes, 2 absent.
The motion passes. Maureen, is there a motion on item 6.2F?
Yes, Madam Chair. I move to authorize the Commissioner to enter into a new contract with the Office of Chief Information Officer for staff augmentation services in support of the Nebraska Early Childhood Professional Records System.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Robin.
The motion was made by Maureen Nichols and seconded by Robin Stevens.
Is there any discussion on this motion?
Penner,
Yes.
Nichols,
Yes.
Fricky,
Yes.
Neary, Goebbels,
Yes.
Morrison, Stevens,
Yes.
Kojons,
Yes.
6 yes, 2 absent.
The motion passes. Maureen, is there a motion on item 6.2G?
Yes. I move to authorize the Commissioner to contract with the Nebraska Children and Families Foundation to design, implement, support, and evaluate a full-service community schools program focused on rural schools.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Patty. Is there any further discussion on this motion? Andrea, please call the roll.
Kojons,
Yes.
Fricky, Goebbels,
Yes.
Morrison, Penner,
Yes.
Nichols,
Yes.
Stevens,
Yes.
Neary, 6 yes, 2 absent.
The motion passes. Maureen, is there a motion on item 6.2H?
Yes. I move to accept the Community Living Traumatic Brain Injury State Demonstration Grant.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you again, Patty. Okay, is there any further discussion on this motion? And call,
Neary, Stevens,
Yes.
Fricky, Nichols,
Yes.
Goebbels,
Yes.
Morrison, Penner,
Yes.
Kojons,
yes.
6 yes, 2 absent.
The motion passed. Maureen, is there a motion on item 6.2I?
Yes, Madam Chair. I move to authorize the Commissioner to contract with Partners for Insightful Evaluation, the Brain Injury Alliance of Nebraska, and the Nebraska Department of Health and Human Services.
Is there a second?
Second.
The motion was made by Maureen Nichols, seconded by Robin Stevens.
Is there any discussion on this motion? And
Fricky, Neary, Penner,
Yes.
Goebbels,
Yes.
Stevens,
Yes.
Morrison, Nichols,
Yes.
Kojons,
Yes.
6 yes, 2 absent.
Agenda item 6.3, Planning and Evaluation Committee. Chair Patty Goebbels, please provide a report from the Planning and Evaluation Committee meeting.
Thank you, President Kojans. The Planning Evaluation Committee met at 11:50 yesterday morning. As chairperson, I indicated that the notes from the previous committee meeting were available and posted in Spark. We had a number of action items. The first one being to approve the waiver request from the Nebraska Correctional Youth Facility to waive the requirements found in Rule 10, Section 007.04A in accordance with the waiver provisions in Rule 10, Section 013.01. Staff member Mickey Scharf presented the committee with information related to the waiver request process, provided information about NCYF compliance monitoring actions taken from 2018 through 2022, noting that the NCYF is scheduled for an on-site continuous improvement visit May 16, 2022. The recommendation for action is the approval of a waiver of requirement for a certified librarian media specialist. If approved, the waiver will be for 1 year. NDE will work with NCYF to help identify strategies for recruiting a certified librarian media specialist. The committee engaged in a dialogue about the supply and demand of certified school librarians, the waivers or modification accommodations made for other schools, how minimum FTE for school librarians be considered in the Rule 10, Rule 14 revisions, and how innovative thinking will influence certification requirements for librarians and libraries of the future. The committee agreed to move the item forward for board action. 2.1.b action item, approve interim program schools to operate for the 2022-2023 school year under Rule 18. That's 92 NAC 18. Regulations and procedures for the approval of interim program schools in county detention centers, institutions, and juvenile emergency shelters. Mickey Scharf reviewed the Rule 18 regulatory authority, identified monitoring procedures, and explained compliance visits for Rule 18 interim program schools, identified elements monitored such as teachers and required instruction. A list of Rule 18 schools to be approved for the 2022-2023 school year was shared with the committee. The approval period is from July 1st through June 30th. The committee recommends that the board confirm approval of interim program schools for the 2022-2023 school year. 2.1.c action item, approve accreditation for the educational service units appearing on an accompanying list for the 2022-2023 school year in accordance with the provisions of Rule 84, 92 NAC 84, regulations for educational service units. A review of statutory authority and ESU accreditation requirements were provided by staff member Mickey Scharf. It was noted that there are 17 educational service units in Nebraska. Schools provide information to ESUs about the services that they need. NDE staff meet with ESU administrators several times a year and have continuous conversations about what educational entities can do to best serve schools. The committee recommends the board accredit Nebraska ESUs for the 2022-2023 school year. From there, we move to discussion, 2.2. 2.2a was discussion on, and really a dialogue, report on the math content area standards. Chairperson Goebbels asked each committee member to share something they liked about the reviewed draft of the Nebraska College and Career Ready Math Standards Revision. Comments included appreciation of having the mathematical processes displayed at the top of each grade level, and the inclusion of comprehensive data standards and indicators across grade levels. Corey Epler stated that the embargoed draft was sent to superintendents on April 26th. Feedback received thus far from superintendents' curriculum directors has included a desire to have a crosswalk of how the revision is different from the 2015 standards. Corey indicated that a crosswalk will be provided once the standards are approved. Deborah Monick also reported that she has received positive feedback about the standards from one school district. Chairperson Goebbels thanked Corey, Deb, Marissa, and the writing team for their efforts in revising the math standards. Corey Epler handed out hard copies of the mathematics standards revision documents for committee review. He went over the timeline for actions taken since the April board meeting. It was noted that no changes to the standards were made during that time. He explained the revisions made related to instructional information at the front of the standards document. It was suggested that the department think about how or if instructional information is included with the standards document and or determine how to distinguish policy decision material, such as standards approval, from guidance documents that are not approved by the board. A timeline of next steps in the standards revision and approval process was explained. Steps will include input from business and industry leaders and meetings with post-secondary math leaders. Draft 1 of the standards will be released on May 9th, 2022, that I believe is Monday, for public input with a survey close date of May 27, 2022. The committee will receive a summary of public input data at the June meeting. It's anticipated that the approval draft will be ready in early fall with a request for board approval in September. Corey also reviewed the talking points and the comparison table that highlighted how the 2022 draft differs from the 2015 math standards. Corey will add several requested board member talking points. Chairperson Goebbels suggested that the comparison table would be helpful for future standards revisions, and if possible, to be provided to board members with the first draft of the standards, because it would help guide board member reading and review of the drafts. The committee acknowledged that social emotional learning is an integral part of student learning, not only as it relates directly to specific content areas, such as math, and with social emotional learning concepts such as math anxiety, persevering in math problem solving, etc., but also to developing and maintaining mental and emotional well-being. Committee members dialogued about the importance of structuring an intentional opportunity for NDE to define social emotional learning and to identify what it is and what it is not. Committee members who served on the ad hoc committee on standards development process noted that improvements have been made and continue improving with each content area development and revision. Robin Stevens thanked the department for listening to ad hoc committee recommendations. 2.3, committee update. 2.3.A, review the 2022-2023 contracts for NWEA and DRC for the delivery of assessment services. Following an introduction of the item by Corey Epler, Jeremy Henniger gave a quick report on the administration of the spring NSCAS growth assessment. May 9th is the last day of the NSCAS growth administration window. Over 300,000 students have taken the assessment. Although there were a few small issues, they were discovered early and corrected. Feedback from schools has been positive, especially about assessment results being available in a timely manner. Jeremy and his staff were thanked for their tireless work as the department transitioned to NSCAS growth. Jeremy presented details of the proposed assessment contracts for NWEA and DRC for 2022-2023. The contracts include development and administration of NSCAS growth, the development and administration of the alternative assessment, as well as professional development and formative assessment information and support. It's important to note that NSCAS growth includes items that are aligned with Nebraska standards and that Nebraska teachers write and review test items. Commissioner Bloomstead explained that the purpose for developing and implementing NSCAS growth is to make testing more efficient, to provide growth data throughout the year, and to have a testing program where assessment results are available to schools almost immediately. 2.3.b, provide an update on priority school designation. Staff member Shirley Vargas provided a review of the statutory requirements for the designation of priority schools. Former and current priority schools were identified, and a status report was provided for each school. Priority school designation process, including identification of team members as well as criteria considered in the selection process of priority schools, were presented. Selection of support intervention teams was also explained. The department provides support for current as well as former priority schools. The next steps for our committee will include progress reports from current priority schools with an accompanying committee recommendation. Contracts for priority school support will be presented for board approval. Chairperson Goebbels adjourned the meeting at 2:04 p.m. This concludes the Planning and Evaluation Committee report.
Thank you. Patty, is there a motion on item 6.3.a?
Yes. I move to approve the waiver request from the Nebraska Correctional Youth Facility to waive the requirements found in Rule 10, Section 007.04a for 1 year in accordance with the waiver provisions in Rule 10, Section 013.01.
Is there a second?
Second.
Maureen? Oh. Maureen, second. She was first, I think. Okay.
The motion was made by Patty and seconded by Maureen Nichols.
Is there any discussion on the motion?
Madam Chair?
Yes.
First off, I just want you to know I support this motion. I just want to go back to, and maybe this doesn't correlate right now with this, but you were talking about the different things around the different rules coming up with the permit, the provisional, whatever, for the media specialist. Is your committee, I'm assuming that the staff, the department is working closely with the Nebraska Librarians Association on this issue. Would that be correct? To ensure that they are working on seeing that we have enough librarians across the state with their assistance?
Yeah.
I didn't really
I'll
say
try
that
to,
very
no,
well.
I will try to respond, and we discussed this a bit in the committee. So there have been changes over time over what library media specialist is and what those requirements are. When we look at what the requirements are for certification and endorsement in that particular area, I think there's some ways that it can become more creative. So we are doing that. We did have a lot of outreach from library media specialists when we were working on Rule 10. That outreach was actually largely about how we were thinking of changing Rule 10 to provide what I'll say is flexibility to schools around how they do that. But that has an impact then depend on possibly how many library media specialists you need. And I think that's the conversation that still needs to be had in that. We obviously, in this case, specifically on this issue, our concern is that they would continue to go without someone who's certified in that, and we're really trying to work on creating some creative opportunities and approaches that might work in this setting. But the same has been true where we've seen shortage areas otherwise. And, you know, again, we're facing shortages in all areas, and we have to be intentional about how we think about providing kind of pathways for folks to enter into that, in this case, library media specialist.
The reason I just raised the question is I had visited the Hastings facility this past month and was so pleased to see that they have a librarian there. She talked about how, you know, she has to order all the books every year and they keep up to date with everything. And so when I saw this, it was really important for me to seek a little more information. So I appreciate what you've shared with me. They need to have the librarians every bit as important as any other school district in the state.
Thank you, Maureen. Is there any further discussion?
Stevens,
Yes.
Neary, Morrison, Kojons,
Yes.
Penner,
Yes.
Goebbels,
Yes.
Nichols,
Yes.
Fricky,
Yes.
6 yes, 2 absent.
The motion passed. Patty, is there a motion on 6.3B?
Yes, there is, Madam President. I move to approve the interim program schools to operate for the 2022-2023 year under Rule 18.
The motion was made by Patty Goebbels and seconded by Lisa Fricky.
Is there any discussion on this motion?
Fricky? Yes. Neary, Penner,
Yes.
Goebbels,
Yes.
Stevens,
Yes.
Morrison, Nichols,
Yes.
Kojons,
Yes.
6 yes, 2 absent.
The motion passed. Patty, is there a motion on item 6.3C?
There is. I move to approve accreditation for the educational service units appearing on the accompanying list for the 2022-2023 school year in accordance with the provisions of Rule 84.
Is there a second?
Second.
The motion was made by Patty Goebbels and seconded by Maureen Nichols.
Is there any discussion on the motion? Andrea, please call the roll.
Morrison, Fricky, Nichols, Nichols,
Yes.
Goebbels,
Yes.
Kojons,
Yes.
Neary, Stevens,
Yes.
Penner,
Yes.
6 yes, 2 absent.
The motion passed. Agenda 6.3D. We've already had that report, correct? On we go.
Hold on. I'd like to talk about that a little bit.
Okay, all right.
So, and I don't know if you want to give an update on kind of what we discussed with SEL a little bit with that. I can give 2 seconds on it here, or if you want to kind of the whole process that we went through to remove it from that guiding part, right?
No, you can go ahead and share that, Kirk, and if I feel compelled to add in, I will do so.
Okay. So there was social emotional learning involved in the, what do you call the first couple pages? You used a word for it. It's not in the standard,
Right.
but it was in the guiding principles of the standard, maybe, or the.
Informative, instructional
Okay.
information is really what it is.
Okay. So that has been removed from that standpoint. In personal opinion, SEL was good at the beginning. It started off with goal setting, self-awareness. Hey, you can do better on math. We talked about that yesterday. Positive stuff. And it's been morphed or hijacked into a little bit of well, a lot of gender, a lot of cultural issues. And that is what is happening with SEL. So I applaud the committee for taking that out of those guidance principles that were on the first part of that, and just keep it to math. And that's what we're going to do with these standards. We're going to call it, it's going to be math. And I asked, this is the second time I've asked Corey Epler, when the questions are written, and I think there's 5,000 questions, if I remember right, there's thousands of questions, to keep the questions as math and keep them there. And I think we'll be able to. I know they get a little bit nervous about sending out the questions, but I think we can embargo those questions just like we did the standards, where we can all look at them as board members. And if there's anything in there that shouldn't be in there that's not math related, and that is more of what SEL has morphed to, then it needs to be called out. So I appreciate the committee taking that away or removing that from, but it is yet to be seen what happens with the questions, which will be done this fall probably.
I'll add just a point on that, and I think we had a conversation maybe previously. Once standards are adopted, then we'll go through our process in which those that are standards that are going to be important in the statewide math assessment, I think that's what Mr. Penner is referring to. There are processes in which the board can see into those questions. I think Patty also discussed, and I think this was an important part of the discussion yesterday too, that we really want to make this Nebraska's, right? That I think that's actually the great part of that process. This is why, even what I was discussing before, the importance of really doing that work and making it about how Nebraska engages with any content area, but in this case with math. And I think that's important for many different reasons, and I think it gives us a chance and you a chance to feel comfortable with not just maybe what the questions are themselves, but the process of that and the importance of those things. So again, I'll just say that's kind of the opportunity for us to work well together in those settings, and we'll make sure that that's all possible. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I guess I want to stress, though, how important instructional information is for teachers related to SEL and mathematics, because there are things like students who have math anxiety, and they aren't able to think math because they're thinking about how they don't like math or they can't do math. So it's really important, I think, for us not to keep those kinds of important instructional guidance things away from teachers, because they are important. I mean, even things like in our committee commenting, I can't do math, right? Well, people can do math. It's they have to learn the skills to do that. Or helping students understand that they can persevere, that it's okay if you miss an item once, figure out what you didn't do right, do some error analysis so that you can get the answer correct. So just want to point that out, that taking them out of that first part of that document does not mean that we don't think they are important. Okay.
I agree 100% with what you just said. Mm-hmm. It's just where it's morphed to, right? Okay.
Any further discussion? Oh, Maureen?
I just wanted to hitchhike on what Patty discussed about the anxiety. Even just as they're reading, they may be a student who has a reading problem, who may not be able to read as well at the 5th grade level or the 6th grade, whatever level they're taking their standards at. And that creates anxiety because they want to do well. They may be a really good math student, but they're having a hard time understanding, what is this word? How do I pronounce it? So yes, there are a lot of issues that go into that whole component, and we cannot
Well, Maureen, I have to respond because this is something I was so excited to see in the math revisions. You know, there's representations, there's communication, and part of the communication is helping kids up front learn the mathematics vocabulary, right? So they know what a polygon is, and when they read that, they don't go, oh, right?
Anybody else? Agenda item 6.4, Vice Chair Lisa Fricke, please provide a report from the Rules and Regulations Committee meeting.
Yes, Madam Chair. We had a brief meeting yesterday, and we were given a brief update on Rule 20, and know that their hearing is upcoming, and so he and Kelly Heineke talked about that very briefly. And then there are rules awaiting approval of the governor. Rule Chapter 24 regulations for certificate endorsements. It was sent to the governor 12/10/2021. And another rule before the governor is Chapter 51 regulations and standards for special education. And that went to the governor on 2/16/2022. So it's very brief. We had a very short agenda, and so it might be longer next month. Thank you.
Thank you for your report, Lisa.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
just a clarification or maybe additional information. Can you tell what Rule 20 is? What Rule 20 deals with? I believe it's teacher certification rules.
Yes,
right?
it is
Okay, thank you.
Certification, and they briefly talked about potential waivers, and more information will be upcoming for the entire board. And I will defer to the commissioner to add any information to that.
Yeah, and I wasn't in that particular committee meeting, but what I will share with the full board is we're looking at Rule 20 and 21 that are both connected to teacher preparation and certification and endorsement areas. And of course, Rule 24 that we did before is awaiting. We'll be looking at all of those. And so the Rule and Reg Committee, probably this is your last easy meeting for a while. We've got some work ahead of us on that particular front that will be advancing that. I think Brad Dirksen, and as he's tried to lead in that process, we're really looking at the changes that were made in statute. We're kind of delayed going very far until we could do that particular review, and so we'll be bringing those things forward. I would anticipate we'll get a hearing draft out and have that hearing. We wanted to notify the board of that particular work and get that out there. Our hope is some of those things that we even learned in the midst of the pandemic of how we can kind of streamline certification process and other things could be also addressed as part of that effort overall. So I just share that with you. Again, I don't know exactly what details were discussed in the committee, but my hope is that you would understand that we're moving forward with that. And again, Rules and Regs Committee, here comes some work your way here very soon.
The first time I chaired that situation where Vice President took over, and I was just very pleased with Brad Dirksen, and I hope that's the name I said earlier, and Kelly Heineke. They answered brief questions that we had, and I guess more substantive, longer rules meeting will ensue, so in the future.
Just one more comment. I've heard from several ESU administrators that as we are addressing rule changes related to things like certification and preparation, to really give serious consideration to using the word educator as opposed to teacher, because some of those truly are more than just for teachers. So I think that's something to keep in mind, because that would certainly make it more inclusive of all the people, professionals who are represented in those.
And I appreciate that, and I appreciate that comment, Patty. And I think it's important for our audience to know that teachers, you get a certain mindset about teachers, but educators include counselors and other people who are involved in the education of the whole child. So, like I said, this was brief update on Rule 20, and then the two rules coming before, or have come before, the governor. So.
I think it's really important for our constituents to know that we're beginning the work on this with the educator shortage in our state. And if you're like me, many of my constituents have contacted me from smaller schools and are very worried about filling positions and unable to fill positions. And so whatever we can do to help that to make sure that there are enough teachers to go around our entire state. Kids need teachers in every room, qualified teachers, educators in every room. Agenda item number 7, there are additional business. There are no items under additional business today. So board, we will take a 5-minute break before we come back for public comment. Item 8, public comment period. We will now move to our public comment period and take up the remainder of our agenda after public comment. Agenda item 8.1. This period may be available to any person who wishes to address the State Board on any subject within its authority, including items appearing on the agenda, except for contested cases. Up to 2 hours will be allowed for public comment period. A majority of members present and voting may take action to extend the total amount of time allowed for public comment period. A majority of members present and voting may also take action to allow or terminate public comment and statutory authority. Those wishing to speak must be signed in at the table outside of the meeting room. Persons speaking to the board during public comment should state their name at the beginning of their allotted time. Anyone refusing to be unidentified will be prohibited from speaking. Each person may address the board for up to 5 minutes. A majority of members present and voting may take action to reduce or extend that amount, the amount of individual time allotted to all speakers. If at any time persons appearing before the board exceed the time limitation set forth in this policy or on the agenda, or become abusive or threatening in language or behavior, it shall be the responsibility of the board president to declare that person out of order and to refuse permission to continue to address the board. We have 21 public comment cards submitted today as we begin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We will bring up first 16. I will attempt to say each name correctly. Please excuse me if I do not. Alyssa Martin, Patrick Martin, Jenna Durr, Judy Durr, W. Pat Moore, Clark Spivey, Tawny Morris, Barb Langley, Mike Meyer, Carol Watson, Sherry Jones, Carol Friesen, Jennifer Thomas, Brenda Fortier, Teresa Thibodeau, and Trent Luce.
Madam Chair, can I make just a request?
Yes.
Okay, just for next time, my request is, I don't have control of the agenda, and I understand that, but if we could come up with a specific time every meeting that we have public comment, I think going towards transparency and the good of the people, it would be nice, maybe around 11 o'clock. We'd kind of like we do lunch when we can, kind of, hey, we can stop, take a break, and do public comment. That's just my request to you two, since I believe you two do the agenda. No answer and the commissioner, no answer needed today, but I wanted to put that request in.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pinner. We'll think about that and discuss it, maybe return to you for more suggestions.
Madam Chair,
Yes. Maureen?
I'd just like to kind of add to Kurt's comment. We always did public comment earlier in the day, earlier in our meeting. I happen to like whoever made the change with the executive committee. I happen to really like it, and the reason having it near after all of our business is the fact that we have these folks that travel from afar. They can hear so much of what we do on this board. we do more than just standards. There are so many other topics, and I think it's really good for our constituents to hear some of the business that we work on. And so while I don't care where the item goes on the agenda, that's what I like about this part of public comment, is for them to be participating and hearing what we are doing, what we actually do, what our work consists of.
Thank you, Maureen. Any other statements? Okay.
Elissa Martin.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm Elissa Martin. I'm from Lexington. And just a couple of things from this morning. I really appreciated hearing the FFA kids. I was an FFA kid, and so that was fun to see. And then the superintendent of McPherson County, when he was talking about the things that some of our ranch kids deal with that people aren't aware of. I grew up as a ranch kid, and I appreciated that. And I think it's important for you guys as a board, as you're thinking about all the work that you do, of thinking that all of our kids have a lot more on their plates than what we sometimes give them credit for. So I think those are just important reminders from this morning. So what I wanted to talk to you guys about today is I have a mentor who talks about, she calls it the energy paradigm. And there's different vibrations that different people put off with the energy that they bring when they bring into a room. You're all aware of this. There's people that you feel when they come into the room. There's people that you feel when they leave the room. And she's put together a paradigm. And so there's things that are very negative emotions that put off very negative energy, things like pride, comparison, frustration, anger, discouragement, bitterness, fear. We're kind of spiraling down now. Grief, regret, apathy, guilt, and shame. And those would all fall under the energy level of about 200. The average person kind of operates around a 200 level. And then there's people that are below that are exhibiting all those things I just said. And then there's people who operate at a higher level, and they do things like gratitude. Just gratitude automatically raises your energy level to about a 300 just by being grateful for things. Going on up, a 350 is courageousness, 400 is generosity, 450 is forgiveness and acceptance, 500 is joy, 600 is peace, and 700 and above is what we consider enlightenment. So most of us do not operate in that realm all of the time. But as I was thinking back over the last year and coming to board meetings, I felt a lot of emotions, and I know you guys have as well. A lot of them have not been in those positive, productive emotions. They've been in the negative ones. And one of the things I decided a couple months ago was I want to think about this process and what I can be grateful for in this process. So I came across a quote from Victoria Adino, who's an author, and she said, "Do not constantly spend your time complaining about a problem you may be having or may be up against. Instead, focus your time toward correcting the problem." And when I think back to a year ago, when I came to my first state school board meeting in Kearney, I sat in the back of the room. I didn't speak. I listened. There were lots of people. You guys remember, you were there. Lots and lots of people, packed room, lots of voices on both sides of the health standards issues. And I listened, and I heard valid things. And I came back in June and I spoke. And if you look back at my public comment over the last months, all of it has been about student achievement, has been about where else could we be spending our time and should we be spending our time besides on these health standards or things like this that just really distract from the business of education and from educating our kids and giving them what they need. I thought the McPherson example was great of that, of like, those kids need to be educated. If they've been out all night helping save their family ranch, they don't need to come to school and question their gender. So I was thinking about that, and I thought, I can get really fired up about all this stuff, and I can be angry and I can feel those emotions, and I thought, instead, I want to flip that. What can I be grateful for? So I'm grateful that you brought forth the health standards, because it woke me up and it woke a lot of other parents up, and it has caused lots of people to get involved who weren't involved before. there's lots more voices being heard. There's lots more people being courageous and willing to stand up and say what they believe in. We've got primary elections coming next week. You guys all know that. And I can 100% say with 1,000% accuracy that I am the most highly educated voter for this election that I have ever been. I've researched candidates on all the races. And I've done that because of this process. So while I don't agree with everything that the board has done, I do want to thank you for bringing that forth, because I do think it's caused a lot of good things to come as well. So thank you guys for your time.
Thank you, Alyssa. Patrick Martin.
My name is Patrick Martin. I'm from Lexington. I have 4 young children. My wife and I have been attending these board meetings since May of 2021, with the exception of a couple that we watched online. It's been really interesting to observe you people up here. Several of you are excellent at speaking out of both sides of your mouth. It was very fun to listen to the commissioner blather on last June about the standards not being influenced by activists and etc. And that was easily proven to be a lie by the FOIA requests of Deb Neary's emails. Also, it took only a quick glance at the national standards from SECUS to see that the proposed Nebraska standards were directly copied from them. Next, it's been really neat for Robin Stevens to ignore all his constituents all last summer and fall while writing op-eds about the benefits of the standards. Then as campaign season rolled around, Mr. Stevens started running radio ads and putting out his own press releases about how he was the only board member who opposed the standards. Are you for real? We've watched all the meetings and seen what you've done and what you've not done. It's astounding that you would lie like that so blatantly. To quote our amazing President of the United States, come on, man. Maybe when we get you retired off this board, you can go work for that old so-and-so. And Robin, you remember how you told my wife at the Dawson County GOP convention that you thought we were cute? Well, I was reading some of your campaign posts, and one of the first comments was a person saying that her and some of the other Dawson County Dems wanted some of your yard signs. I thought that was really cute too.
Thank you, Patrick. Jenna Durr.
My name is Jenna Durr, and I'm from Kearney. Today I speak on behalf of the Protect Nebraska Children Coalition, and today I am really tired of standing before you all addressing this board. Since April of 2021, there has been someone speaking on behalf of our coalition at every state school board meeting. Our messaging has been consistent, and if it feels like you hear the same thing over and over, it's because you are hearing the same thing over and over. We sincerely wish we could move on, but we cannot move on, and we will not move on until the Nebraska State Board of Education votes to permanently reject the development of state health sex standards. And you all had the opportunity to do so. Mr. Penner presented a motion to permanently reject the development of state health sex standards during the February meeting. All of this could have ended. Instead, aside from Mr. Penner, you all cast your vote disregarding the 90% of your own survey participants who do not want health sex standards developed from the state. Not to mention the emails, calls, and ongoing public participation. Mr. Penner, we cannot thank you enough for your voice of reason in the face of ongoing efforts to engage in social activism and the promotion of unscientific and medically inaccurate health sex standards. Nebraska deserves better. There is absolutely nothing that prevents a school from developing health standards. In fact, we know many already have. Additionally, we currently have a state framework for health education. It's disingenuous to pretend that schools are so desperate and somehow holding on for the state school board to save them and give them health standards. Teachers at a local level are more than qualified to help draft standards that work for their communities and their students. Over the past year, we have heard from countless teachers who were too worried to speak or who were told they could not. Teachers do not want to teach comprehensive sex education, and many are willing to walk away if the standards are adopted. We already have staffing crises. You guys have talked about it multiple times today. Schools have more pressing concerns to address than controversial and unnecessary standards. This State Board of Education has more pressing concerns. I often hear about our poor test scores, so this week I went to the Nebraska Department of Education's own website and found the link to the nation's report card. You could choose a variety of different data points, and what I found was just awful. In 2019, the percentage of Nebraska's 4th grade students who were at or above the proficient level in math was 45%. The percentage of 8th graders was just 37%. Reading was worse. In 2019, the percentage of 4th grade students who were at or above proficient level was 37%, and for 8th graders, it was 34%. And the trends over the reported years weren't necessarily that great. The science report only had information from 2015. 4th graders were at 47% being at or above proficient level, and 8th graders were at 41%. I can't even imagine what our scores would be if we had updated data. These numbers represent our children, the best of Nebraska's future. How are more than 50% of our children falling below this level of proficiency? What does this mean for their future? Our students and families deserve a state school board focused on core competencies. They need an education that will prepare them for the realities of their futures. Some may graduate and directly enter the workforce. Some may choose technical education, and some may attend traditional colleges. Regardless of their choices, they all require a solid foundation. Abandon social activism and make our students the priority. I also wanted to add, in response to you, Maureen, it does matter when the public comment is, and I'm sure you all know there is a live link and a lot of people watch these meetings. So it does matter. It's not that we don't listen or can't listen. It doesn't really matter if you're physically present or not. A lot of people watch these meetings. So I wanted to make sure everyone could understand that. Thank you.
Thank you, Jenna. Judy Durr.
Judy Durr, Amherst. Good morning. Really, thank you all for being here. I had something, but now I have been asked to read something else, and this has not settled well with me. This was a text received late last night from some Nebraska teachers who could not be here because they're in their classrooms, and they are teaching as we speak. They want to be heard, and the request is to remain anonymous as they feel this isn't a safe space for them, and they are teaching. So, we are upset that the State Board of Education has done all of this behind closed doors without taking into consideration our students, teachers, and the parents. Specifically, integrity and trust is in question by many teachers. Regarding District 7, if he had taken any consideration into what teachers have had to go through these last couple of years, he would have reached out and talked to us about how things are going. It's easy for all of them to go to their board meetings and sit in their chairs and make rules and regulations and not get out and visit with the people they are representing or misrepresenting. We need someone who will visit our towns and our schools and talk to the teachers, and not just go talk to the good old boys club in Gothenburg. Hopefully, this helps give an idea that we are frustrated with this board. We need someone that will speak up for all of us. This is something the entire state school board needs to start doing. Get out of Lincoln and Omaha, listen to the teachers and your constituents. Please get this figured out. We have needed help, and now we need it more than ever. And on a personal note, I am so grateful for teachers. I am, and I do thank them. But I wanted to honor this text that I received. And I thank you for all of your time as well. Thank you for coming out here to North Platte.
Thank you, Judy. Debbia Pat Moore.
Yes, my name is Pat Moore, and I am running for District 7 seat on this board. I do thank you for coming out. I am disappointed that there are two members that never made it from Omaha this morning. I've driven a long way on a lot of 44 counties, and would have liked to have had them be here to see a little of what it's like out here. I really appreciated the conversation last month that had to do with the redoing the policies and procedures and figuring out where the board has duties and where the department has duties. And I hope to be a part of that next year to help with that, because that's kind of what I do is some of those background things. And I would encourage you to continue. I was listening, but not, who was it that brought that forward last month? Thank you. Keep working on it. And I also appreciate, as I heard from the state of Florida, that there were several dozen different sets of materials for math curriculum that they had rejected, and getting back to this social emotional learning that Kirk was talking about. I hope that as we look at the standards for the math, that it also includes this understanding of math. Math, just math, not, you know, as far as anxiety, I have some anxiety about some of the things that I do, and that's part of life. I hope we aren't trying to protect students from having anxiety. Yes, we as leaders and teachers and so on need to work with that anxiety, absolutely, but we can't protect the students. We can't bubble wrap them. They need to face real life. The students that were here today, they were facing real life situations, and I've done fire calls, and they're real life situations. But I appreciate what you're trying to do and the work that you're about, and I hope to be on the board with you next year.
Thank you, Pat. Clark Spivey.
My name is Clark Spivey. I attended some of these meetings in Kearney some time back. Haven't been much in touch, so I kind of lost track of individuals. As a background, and this is related to the behavior, sex education standards or whatever kind of thing. As a background for the United States, we're, I believe, as a civilized nation, the one with the highest percentage of our citizens in prison right now. And I think part of that has to do with the fact that our legal system in terms of social or criminal matters is kind of Mickey Mouse. Years ago, as jurisprudence was being developed, I believe in England and so forth, for instance, there were indicia of a crime, and that would include things like someone being harmed by an action, that sort of thing. In our situation, our legal thing has to do more with facts rather than right and wrong. And then I go back as I'm a believer in the Lord Jesus Christ and a reader and student of the Bible. When God had destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah, it wasn't just because of their personal choices regarding interactions with consenting persons. When two angels showed up with Lot, who I believe was a nephew of Abraham, and it's recorded in chapter 19 of Genesis, the men of Sodom surrounded the house, apparently intending to force their attentions on those inside. That's not consenting behavior. And I believe the spirit of trying to impose non-biblical sexual things on other people's children is in the area of forcing things on people wrongly. I think what is required by or desired by parents should be more important, and I think y'all, maybe not all of you, but are involved in something that's not so important and actually is evil. I've faced some considerable personal weaknesses in my life, and if it would please God to give you a demonstration by pulling the plug on me at this point, I'm more like James and John, as recorded in Luke, when they asked Jesus if he wanted them to, or if he might bring down the fire of God on those who were rejecting them, of the Samaritans at that time, and Jesus said he came to save and instead of to destroy. I think each of us, I believe, according to the Bible, will give an answer for our actions before Christ. He died for everyone's sins. We have a free pass for eternal life simply by taking God up on his deal, if you will, and that is believing on the Lord Jesus Christ. And the Bible not only gives adequate guidance for interaction and social justice, but for our personal lives. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Clark. Connie Morris.
Good morning. My name is Tawny Morris, and I'm from North Platte, so thank you guys for being here. I am reading this on behalf of Marnie Hodgen. Last summer, I was at a forum on education. During the Q&A, a woman spoke about her son, who was a teacher at an Omaha public school. Her son had passed out the first test of the year to his students. He watched them write their answers, and he noticed one student staring at his paper. At the end of the allotted time, the student turned in a blank test. The teacher privately spoke to the student, and the student confided that he couldn't read. This child was in the 5th grade. The concerned teacher went to administration, and the teacher was told, "Oh, that student, he's fine, just go ahead and pass him." A few weeks ago, I went to an event. A father pulled me aside and said, "My 2nd grader attends a school in District 66. She isn't being taught anything about American civics." Nebraska Revised Statute 79-724 under Section 3 reads, "All grades of all public, private, denominational, and parochial schools below the 6th grade shall devote at least 1 hour per week to exercises or teaching periods for the following purpose: the discussion of noteworthy events pertaining to American history or the exceptional acts of individuals and groups of Americans, the historical background, memorization, and singing of patriotic songs, such as the Star-Spangled Banner and America the Beautiful, respect for the American flag as a symbol of freedom and the sacrifices of those who secured that freedom, and instruction as to proper conduct in the presentation of the American flag." I was naive in thinking that CSE and CRT were the main issues. Although still important, when Omaha public school teachers are told to pass illiterate students, or when local school districts and the State Board of Education are not upholding state statutes, I realize the mess in our schools is bigger than I imagined. It's overwhelming to take on someone else's mess. To be fair, some of this mess was created before you were in your seats. But to be honest, A lot of this mess was made while you have been sitting in these seats. District 8, I'm rolling up my sleeves. I've got a broom, garbage bags, and I'm ready to clean up. Again, that was on behalf of Marnie Hodgen, who's running for District 8. Thank you.
Thank you, Tawny. Barb Langley. Barb Langley.
I couldn't hear you, sure. Thank you for allowing me to speak today. And I wish to speak on the health sex standards that you have proposed and still considering to bring that forward. I'm requesting that the Nebraska State School Board completely abolish the sex standards that our K-12 school systems are maybe to endorse in the future. The role of the State School Board of Education is to adopt standards to educate our children so that they can read and comprehend the English language, develop strong math skills, begin to appreciate the arts and the music, understand science and the vast influence it has on our lives, to write effectively and express their own thoughts, all in an effort to develop skills necessary to become independent, productive students and citizens. The proposed health standards does nothing to support those concepts. Rather, they are an attempt to indoctrinate children with radical ideologies about race, sex, gender, orientation, inclusion, diversity, and equity. These ideologies have no place in our K-12 school system. We need to protect our innocent children and young adults. Let them just be themselves as they go about their daily duties in their classrooms and schools. They can learn about the facts of life as they mature, and their parents address these stages in their life that's appropriate for their age and for each person. Parents are the first and best educators of their children, especially concerning ideologies being proposed in the health standards. Science has proven that we are made male and female. Merely adopting standards that try to dismiss this fact indicate there is an unlimited possibility of genders in our universe, and it not only perpetuates untruth, it's a lie. This leads children into believing that they have the power to manipulate the truth. Mathematicians have always proven that 2 + 2 = 4, and no standard introduced for school children can change that fact. That's the only answer. Children are modest and want their bodies to be kept private, not to be exhibited in front of other children. They just want to be themselves. If they're girls and they want to be outside riding horses, operating farm equipment, fixing things, let them. It doesn't mean that they should be transfigured into a man. If they are boys and they like to cook, keep their room clean, like to have their clothes look nice, care for siblings or other adults, let them. That doesn't mean they should be transfigured into a woman. Children go through phases. They want to have a different name. They don't like their hair color, the way they're built. They even want to have different parents and siblings. These are normal phases of life that most children experience while their bodies are ever changing and their brains are developing. When the time is right, they, as adult individuals, will decide what path they want to take. And this time is well after they have exited the K-12 school system. In the proposed health standards, the State Board of Education is trying to indoctrinate, groom, sexualize, confuse, and destroy the future of our state, our children. Parents need to be the sole proprietor in teaching their own children these important issues, not the K-12 school system. Again, I implore you to completely abolish the health standards that you have proposed for the implementation in our school system. Additionally, I request that Mr. Bloomstead be removed from his position as commissioner because of his radical beliefs that do not reflect the core values of the people of Nebraska. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you, Barb. Mike Mike Meyer.
Did you say Mike Meyer? I couldn't hear you, Robin. Hello, my name is Mike Meyer from Kearney, Nebraska, and I'd just like to start by saying our founding fathers pledged their lives, their fortunes, and their sacred honor, and lives isn't just walking to the gallows. It's their time, and you're doing that, and thank you. It's a hard job. I'm the parent of 3 grown children, 2 girls, 1 boy, and God wasn't confused when he made them, and they didn't need help changing to something later on when they didn't understand what that change meant. A couple of points. Even if a child has strong desires, we don't let children buy and consume alcohol because it will damage them. We don't let children get married because they have no comprehension of what that change is going to do to their life. Children are not allowed to solely make big, important decisions. They don't have the depth of knowledge to fully comprehend the ramifications. We've all heard stories of children being encouraged to transition their gender, and if you think it's not happening in Nebraska, we have a senator in Omaha that has a 10-year-old that's going through a transition right now. Why in God's name are we driving so hard at robbing our children of their innocence? And to make no mistake, that's what's at the heart of these standards. As we as adults in society are the protectors of innocence. And in that role, we lock up abusers of children because for millennia, we have understood that children are our future and they need our protection. Health is not a topic which even falls under your charter. I would suggest you stay under your lane. Finally, Mr. Stevens, you explained to Mr. Penner a couple of meetings ago how the way the sausage is made is with compromise. Well, I would tell you that when you're talking about methods, absolutely, all day long, that is the process. But leaders who will compromise on their principles are not trustworthy and should not be in office. And I would just end with, please, scrap the standards and stay in your lane. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Carol Watson. Carol Watson.
Greetings, State Board of Education. I am thankful to be able to be here. This is within my territory of livelihood, and been very thankful to be in this part of Nebraska. Born and raised as a citizen of Nebraska and this great Republic of the United States of America. I want to thank you again for selecting North Platte to come and have the state school board meeting. I have journeyed 4 to 5 hours several times to the state board meetings in the rest of the great state in the eastern part. But you are missing out on the wonderful part of west central Nebraska and the Sandhills and our dear people out in Chimney Rock area, Scotts Bluff. I hope sometime you will see fit to do it there too. I'm addressing you as the board for this 3rd time since the critical race theory and sex education surfaced in March of 2021, and I oppose on a number of issues. Can I remind you of Dietrich Bonhoeffer stating this: the ultimate test of a moral society is the kind of world that it leaves to its children. Silence in the face of evil is itself evil. God will not hold us guiltless. Not to speak is to speak. Not to act is to act. Therefore, I must act. I must speak. So I would ask the question, well, does our great Constitution of the United States still work today, 250 plus years later? It will. It will work if we as patriots will protect its basis. And it says, it is the timeless principle of jurisdiction that govern human behavior. Let me say that again. Our founding fathers said, it's the timeless principle of jurisdiction that govern human behavior. Well, the education of the future generations must focus on becoming good citizens in this republic, preserving the freedoms that have been bought with the highest price of one's own life, for the good of the those coming behind. This curriculum of the CRT and the CSE promote ideals of radicals, not principles of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness for all. Do you know who Dr. Benjamin Rush was? I love history. Dr. Benjamin Rush was the early educator in the Founding Fathers. He had a list of his accomplishments. He taught that public schools had 3 purposes. Number 1, teach students to love and serve God. Number 2, teach and serve students to love their country. And 3rd, teach students to love and serve their families. And the reason he put the country before families was because if you love your country, you're going to preserve your families. The CRT and the health standard curriculums are designed and written by, sad to say, radical activists who would reverse the successful model of Dr. Rush's teaching that have been upheld for more than 2 centuries. You who have been elected by the state of Nebraska, people have turned a blind eye and a deaf ear to the thousands of parents, citizens, and patriots of Nebraska counties. And we have shown up time and time again. And maybe you've thumbed your nose at us by refusing to answer to the will of the majority of the people. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said, "He who accepts evil without protesting against it is really cooperating with it." I am not cooperating with it, and I am therefore asserting my right to reject these radical CRT and sex education standards for my great-grandchildren in Nebraska. Duty demands I take a stand against this cesspool of chaotic ideals. But again, I thank you for your time, and thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you, Carol. Sherry Jones. Sherry Jones.
This is the day the Lord has made. Let us rejoice and be glad in it. That's just what I received today. And I'm going to rejoice in this day. Thank you for allowing us to be here. I'm Sherry Jones from Grand Island, a candidate for State Board of Education District 6. I'm going to briefly share some thoughts on social emotional learning. With the recent influx of federal relief funding, many schools are now bringing social emotional learning programs into their schools. Originally, when I was an elementary school counselor, SEL's goals were to teach children to understand and manage emotions, set and achieve positive goals, feel and show empathy for others, establish and maintain positive relationships, and make responsible decisions. These goals, I believe, are seen as valuable by most people, including myself. And to meet these goals, lessons would be given by the school counselor through guidance lessons in the classroom setting. However, in 2019, there was a shift to what is called transformative social emotional learning. Unfortunately, many do not know there has been this change. In reading from the Castle website, articles from various sources, and listening to webinars, I found that transformative SEL is indeed different from the original SEL. The shift is significant and concerning to me. The following words are from a former teacher and SEL expert. She says, quote, Transformative SEL is basically race and gender ideology embedded into what had previously been neutral student competencies. They use innocuous language like social emotional learning that sounds nice to cover the Trojan horse that is for bringing in critical race ideology, gender identity, sexual orientation instruction, and social justice education, end of quote. In the article, she cited sources providing evidence. I must ask to those of you who have been attending State Board of Education meetings for the past year, does this feel like deja vu? Could transformative SEL be just another avenue in which to bring in gender identity and sexual orientation? I can't help but wonder and worry. And in my research on this topic, I found a link between transformative SEL and the surveys students are being asked to take in many schools across Nebraska. Some of the questions on these surveys seem rather intrusive and leading. Both SEL and the surveys take away instructional time from academic subjects like reading, writing, and math. Considering our low proficiency scores, this doesn't seem like wise use of instructional time. In closing, I do not bring up the subject of SEL to impart fear, but rather to encourage parents, teachers, community members, and school boards to be vigilant, and most importantly, to research transformative SEL and find out if it is being implemented in your school. Personally, I would be interested to know where you current State Board of Education members stand on transformative SEL. And thank you for the opportunity to speak. And since I have a minute, I do want to comment on Tim of McPherson County Schools' story. I believe it's a story for all Nebraska school districts to hear. They are doing a lot with little and seemingly with grateful hearts. That was so interesting to me. I think they are a true example of tenacity in rural Nebraska. I just love to hear that. So again, thank you for allowing me to speak.
Thank you, Sherry. Carol Friesen. Carol?
Hi, I'm Carol Friesen from Lincoln County, and I too appreciate you coming out to this part of the state. I think that's very inclusive and diverse of you. And I would also encourage you to trek further west because there's some really incredible people and stories and scenery and facilities that lie even further west than we are. I think it kind of comes down to what you talked about what seems like hours ago and hours, but you talked about trust, and you talked about how you had lost the trust of the people, and that was of concern to you. The commissioner and the board batted around. Yes, we're all responsible. Yes, we're all working on it. Yes, this is very important, and it is, because that is actually at the basis of why people continue to worry, watch, monitor, which is good. Because if we'd been worried, watched, and monitoring years ago, there'd probably be different people sitting in the seats. And come this election, those worried people, those people that have been monitoring, the people that know what's going on, will also be voting, and it could turn things up on its end. So there's a lot of a loss of trust, and you've heard a little bit about it, you know, when you're talking about math standards, because you'd think, math, what can they do with math? Oh, but we've seen some of the things that some places have done with math. And we say, not here. And we don't trust you to keep what Sherry Jones was talking about, this social emotional learning on steroids, out of even standards of math. So you've got a major trust issue. It's going to continue. It revolves mostly around your unrelentless ability to push these standards in the face of intense objection. The health standards have been dissected, they've been looked at, people have weighed in on it for a long time. So, so what did you do? You put them on a shelf indefinitely where you could reach them as soon as it was handy. And you had a chance to redeem some of that trust. You had a chance for earning back some of that trust when Mr. Penner presented the motion to permanently get rid of these standards, and all but Mr. Penner voted that they wanted to keep them on that handy shelf. So you have not made any significant steps toward regaining the trust of people. And I would like to kind of hone in on an individual, since this is his district, but your campaign swings around this concept that you were the leader in getting it put on that shelf, that handy shelf. And I've gone through minutes and I've gone through all kinds of stuff. I cannot see that was a strong conservative leadership. It was, and it is continuing to this day, being surrounded by the idea that not now, later. We'll get it in later. Let's keep it on the shelf. So I call kind of like, that's kind of fraudulent to put yourself out there as a conservative leader and turn around and actually vote against the action that would have proved it. And then I must say that last night it came to me that you had sent out a text, you or your candidacy team sent out a text accusing Elizabeth Tegmeyer of claiming that teachers were the problem. I have never heard anything more ridiculous in my life. I've heard both of you speak in person. She wants the same things I hear you guys giving lip service to, but she's got the guts to probably see it to fruition as far as making it easier for teachers to cross states, easier to add to their disciplines, easier to recruit teachers. So she's a teacher. Her husband works for a school district. I have seen her engage with teachers all across this district, and for you to throw that kind of mud out there just to see if any of it will stick, I find that in itself to be one of the most untrustworthy things that I have seen in a long time.
Thank you, Jennifer Thompson, Jennifer Thomas.
Good morning, Board, and echoing some other thank yous for coming to North Platte and saving me the trip, you know, going to Kearney or Lincoln, because I am a North Platte proud native, went to school here. Both of my kids go to school here, and a little off script. I know they've already left, but a big shout out. You know, I saw some of the FFA kids, and Mr. Swedberg is my son's ag teacher at the high school, just loves him. Mrs. McLean at my daughter's elementary at Eisenhower, she's like awesome, love her, love our teachers. Okay, back to my script. When I read the proposed health standards last year, I, along with others, was shocked. Until that point, I knew very little about the State Board of Education and could not have told you the name of my representative. But I was sure that whomever it was, they would be fighting this garbage. So on April 28th, I emailed Mr. Stevens, and I said, I am writing to you in regard to the proposed health standards put forth by the NDE, since you are my District 7 representative. Can you please tell me where you stand, particularly as it pertains to sexuality and issues of race? I look forward to hearing from you. To which he replied, Jennifer, I have been asked that question about where I stand, and I'll tell you what I've told all others. When the State Board receives a final copy of the proposed health standards that is ready to be debated and voted on, you will know where I stand. Until that time, as stated below, the process will continue. You then elaborated on the time-proven standards process and the survey on the NDE website. At no point did you express any concern with the material in the standards. None. After receiving overwhelmingly negative feedback on the draft standards, including copious testimony, including mine, at the May State Board of Education meeting, what was your next step? Well, to write an op-ed denouncing all of us naysayers, of course. From the North Platte Telegraph, May 24th, you wrote, quote, "While pleased with the turnout and much of the information brought forth by passionate individuals, I was also discouraged by those who believe falsehoods about these standards." You went on to say that these standards were not highly influenced by political leftists, economic socialists, and political activists, nor part of a worldwide plan to sexualize children. And then, quote, "I do not know where these thoughts are coming from, but whatever individual or organization is spreading these false narratives, they need to stop." You then defended the standards at length with no trace of disagreement. You gave a lengthy list of talking points in support of the health standards, which appear to have been provided to you by someone at the NDE or possibly one particular board member. After it was proven that the standards were, we provided lots of evidence, in fact, influenced by leftist, socialists, and critical race theory, and oh yeah, this push to sexualize young children is happening across the globe. Did you follow up with an apology for attacking us concerned citizens? If so, I didn't see it. And that is why it is crazy to hear your campaign ads saying how you led the charge against the standards. Really? I wish that would have been true. I really do. I was counting on it. But sadly, it was dedicated parents and grandparents who led the charge with no help from the board until Mr. Penner was appointed. I wish you would have stood with us when it counted, but you didn't. I would challenge you to send me evidence of your leading the charge against the health standards. I do recall at one meeting you talked about there are things that unite us, and I agree. There are still things that can bring about unity. And I would ask that you as a board push aside all of the radical socio-political nonsense and focus on areas we can all agree are important, like science, reading, and math, and supporting our fantastic teachers so they can do what they do best. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. Brenda Fortier. Brenda Fortier.
It's Fortner, Mr. Stevens. You know, sir, if you waited until the people were done clapping and were paying attention, then those that you're calling on would probably hear you call their names. And you've done this the entire time. So I want to address Rule 10. I listened to the superintendents of ESU 16 not too long ago, and how they said that they're financially strapped because of Rule 10 in the legislature. We just heard how you postponed Rule 10 for a youth corrections facility, and I would suggest and also hope that you could do the same for our rural schools. Let them focus on paying their teachers more so that we can retain the ones that we have. They don't need to be putting in all that money on a certain kind of dictionary or number of magazines or things that don't matter. Our teachers are what matter, and we need to be showing them that we have their backs. And you guys, as our school board members, our elected officials, need to have their backs. Scrap Rule 10. Just be done with it. Postpone it for all of them. Sir, as you've talked about the pandemic we're in, it seems that you guys have created a pandemic. There's teachers leaving because they don't want to teach these standards. And Mr. Penner, thank you so much for bringing up the language that we need to be addressing in the math standards. I think that you guys have awoken a sleeping giant. You guys have our attention. And I do want to say thank you for those of you who have not been on your devices in front of you. It's nice seeing Deborah Neary not here on hers throughout the entire thing. Also, scrap the standards. Just scrap them. Be done with them. Give us a little bit of peace until school starts again. And of course, we will have new representatives on this board. Mr. Stevens, you are a liar. You are a liar. We have called you out on it. Do you really honestly think the people of Nebraska believe your commercials? We don't. You are a liar. It would be best if you would just resign now. Just resign. Have some dignity. You have shown none. Also, I'm a candidate for legislature for District 42. This is the second time I've spoken to you guys. We shouldn't have to keep coming over and over and over telling you guys the same things. Our concerns, our heartfelt concerns. And you dismiss us by putting those standards on the shelves. I think we are done being dismissed. And I don't know how much more proof you guys need to have. But I do suggest that the initiative to get rid of the state school board be signed by these people, because if we can't elect officials that are better than you, Mr. Stevens, then we need to get rid of the state school board. Thank you.
Thank you, Brenda. Teresa Thibodeau.
Good afternoon. My name is Teresa Thibodeau. I'm a candidate for governor, and I'm also an early childhood expert. I've spent a lot of time watching your meetings and keeping up with things that are going on here because of my lifelong dedication to children. I've made some observations during this meeting today and noticed that the first part of the meeting there was a lot of time wasted on congratulations and patting yourselves on the back. And with all due respect, there's no congratulations in order here. We have children that are not graduating proficient. You've heard several examples of teachers being told to push children through. I spoke to someone just the other day that said they have 4 kids who shouldn't be graduating high school, but they're rushing to try to figure out just how to get them through. What is that doing to our children? And then there was more conversation of, well, we've been having conversations and more talk of COVID. We're 2 years into COVID. Where is your plan? Where is your plan to return to the basics of math, science, English, reading, and social studies? There is no plan. And then you talked about coming up with a definition for SEL. That definition was made a long time ago, and it's in early childhood. It's when a baby is first born and they make that attachment to their parents. Operative word, their parents, because parents are your child's first and most important teacher. And the parents teach about a loving and a caring environment. It's teaching children how to self-regulate and how to help, be a helper, clean up after themselves, be a good friend. That's what gives them confidence and relieves anxiety. But I heard, well, a child might be anxious doing math because they don't know how to read the word parallelogram or whatever word you used. Well, guess what? If you'd figure out why they're not proficient in reading, they wouldn't be anxious about reading math terms. Math isn't social, nor is it emotional, and math doesn't have a gender. It's math. Just teach the children math. And anxiety isn't necessarily a bad thing. We should not be trying to shelter our children from anxiety all the time. That helps them learn, it helps them succeed, and when they overcome something that scares them, it builds their self-confidence. I would suggest maybe meeting with the teachers. Instead of trying to figure out why they are leaving in droves, sit down and meet with them and allow them to be heard without the fear of being fired. Return back to the basics. Do a study to figure out what is going on with our children. It's not the teacher's fault. There's too much pressure put on them. There is something going on that our children are not graduating proficient. And one way to do that is I would just encourage you to allow kids to be kids and teachers to do what they do best. Teaching is a calling. They want to nurture the minds of young people. They want them to graduate proficient. And they want to spend their time and have the autonomy to be able to do that in their classrooms. So I sure hope that everyone up here has been hearing, because I commend everyone in this room who has been coming to meeting after meeting. Because this board, you do report to the citizens of Nebraska. Listen to them. Hear their words and their concerns. Thank you.
Thank you, Teresa. Trent Luce.
Thank you for the opportunity. My name is Trent Luce. Our daughters, Kelly, 29 years, and we have 3 daughters. Our third one is going to graduate public high school in 2 years. And I will channel my wife, Kelly, at this moment, as she would be yelling at me right now, Trent, either you're part of the solution or you are the problem. I would start by saying that I believe I've just witnessed a curriculum of social emotional learning that will have an effect. It is the public standing up saying there's something wrong. What are you going to do about it? Obviously, I echo the sentiments of Teresa Thibodeau. She said there's something wrong. I think I know what's wrong. I've spoken in 41 states in 12 months. I speak in high schools all over the country. I've spoken in 4 high schools in the last 60 days. I'm a proud graduate of the American Farmer degree and the National FFA. And last year, there were 0 young men on the state FFA officer team in the state of Nebraska. There's 1 young man this year. We rarely find young men in high school that are willing to stand up. And the question is, why? Why are the young men reluctant to be leaders? I think I know. You see, I went to California about 20 years ago. I went to a tremendous educational system in a high school in Modesto, and I went in this classroom, and the teacher was just doing this fantastic job extracting DNA from a strawberry. I mean, it's amazing that we can teach these kids this level of information and science. And you know what the teacher told me after the class? Trent, we're teaching these kids how to get DNA out of a strawberry, and they don't know where babies come from. In 1970, 18% of the births in the United States were to single mothers. Almost 1 in 2 births in the United States today are to single mothers. We've demonized dad. We want to talk about sex in early ages, but we don't talk about the family unit. We don't talk about how important dad is. You see, I did grow up with social emotional learning. It was called Grandpa and Dad. My grandfather, Calvin J. Luce, was born February the 17th, 1918. He did not go past 8th grade because he had to come back to the farm and raise food. And yet that man taught me more about critical thinking and problem solving than anybody else I knew other than my father, Larry Lee Luce. So to me, it's pretty simple. We forget about all the nonsense and we get back to teaching the basics about life as God intended, teaching about the family unit. And you know why I'm having this conversation with you today? Because on the trip out here on Highway 92, we made an unexpected stop in Arnold, and I had to go to the bathroom. For the record, there are no litter boxes in the bathroom in the Arnold truck stop. But there is above the urinal this sign that reads, "To my son, wherever your journey in life may take you I pray you'll always be safe. Enjoy the ride and never forget your way back home. I can't promise to be here for you for the rest of your life, but I can promise to love you for the rest of mine. Dad.
Thank you, Trent. The next 5 people may come up. Vicki Bauer, Sally Shires, Rita Fritsch, Cheryl Harkinson, and Miriam Nikita. Vicki Bauer.
Good morning. My name is Vicki Bauer. I'm from Culbertson, Nebraska. And I want to, first of all, one of the things I wanted to talk about was the SEL and the math curriculum. And I want to thank you, Kirk, for making, bringing up the changes that you're talking about. Number one, it shouldn't even be in there. We shouldn't have any part of it in there. Shouldn't even be a sentence in there. When I read this, I thought to myself, why is social and emotional skills and connections needed in math? And the answer they gave was, they said, they need it because why arguing is needed in math to strengthen social awareness and relationships. I thought, what? Are you serious? It's math. Then I happened to read a friend that is in a state that has SEL. Well, SEL is another word for CRT and CSE. It just sounds nicer as SEL because everybody's so against CRT and CSE. So let me tell you what the math problem was. When you go home, well, no, this was the question. I'll take that back. So in your home, how many racists are in your family? What's the total number of people in your family? So how many that are left are not racists? Yeah, that's your SEL. So no, there's no place for it. My husband has been in education for 44 years now. And I will tell you, the kids don't know how to read. They don't know how to read well. I have grandchildren that don't like to read well. Or they don't like to read. They can read well, but they don't like to read. But he taught history. There were many kids, more than one, I won't say how many, just more than one, that could not read, that he read the test answers to them on every test so they would pass. And he lectured every class so they could hear it. So we've got a lot of work to do, and we better start working on reading and math skills. In Sunday, we had confirmation at our church. There were 5 kids. We have a small church. There were 5 that were confirmed. 4 out of the 5, they said, how did you come here? Why did you come for confirmation? They all said it was their grandmother that pushed them, that nagged them. Thank heavens for grandmas. I'm a grandma. My kids are grown and have children. I have 7 grandchildren. And I'm a nagger. You need to do this, you need to do that. But in the song that we sang, it was called Blessings, in that it says, what we do for now affects our families for generations and generations and thousands of generations. So yes, our actions are very, very important because you're affecting generations for thousands of generations, and we have to stop the nonsense. I commend Tryon for what they have done, and maybe this is an opening, awakening, to the State Board of Education. Our students out in rural Nebraska have a greater responsibility, and they don't have time to be learning about whatever it is that some silly liberal wants to make them learn. They need their math, they need their business skills, they need their reading, they need their math. I think I said that twice already. They don't need social emotional learning, and they definitely don't need sex standards. And then I want to go on to something else real quick. The earlyhood child education, I wish there would be a little more transparency on that. We all know that a child's brain development is greatest from 0 to age 4. I would like to make sure that the curriculum guidance for that is definitely watched, because we don't need any indoctrination by 4 years old. So, thank you.
Thank you, Vicki. Sally Shires. Sally Shires. Rita Fritsch.
Thank you for letting me speak. My name's Rita Fritsch, and I'm from Culbertson. I actually wasn't going to speak today, but after going through the agenda, I had several questions. I know truth and transparency has been an issue with this school board. When reading some of the things like 6.2D, 6.2E, 6.2F, I don't think the normal layperson knows what that means by transitional and coaching practices referred to in 6.2D. In 6.2E, I would like an explanation about what agreement was signed with the Department of Health and Human Services. We don't know. And lastly, a brief explanation on 6.2F. What does that actually entail? I think for a better relationship between the Nebraska State School Board and all these people, it would be nice if you'd give us a brief explanation instead of just what you've done and congratulating yourselves. Thank you.
Thank you, Rita. Cheryl Harkinson.
Hello, I'm Cheryl Hawkinson from Cambridge, Nebraska. And actually, I turned this in as written comments, and so I don't have what I was going to say, but I think I can sum it up pretty briefly. And a lot of people here have done a wonderful job of expressing where the lack of trust has come from. And I made notes, Mr. Blumstead, when you were speaking, and you were talking about during COVID, that you felt like you lost our trust then because you lost touch with us. That's not it. What it is, and many people have spoken much more eloquently than I can, about we felt like you misled us. You told us one thing. You said, oh no, these are not from the national, and I wrote it down, so I apologize, the national health standards. And then we find out a lot of those things were directly from those standards. That's what broke the trust, not the uncommunication with us. We would actually appreciate open, honest communication with us. So, we're aware, we're watching you like crazy. Today, we attend. So many people here have given up a lot. They've left their jobs in order to attend here in order to speak to you. This is my third time attending. I spoke to you in Lincoln. Okay? One of the things I said to you in Lincoln was, I'm a retired instructor from Southeast Community College in Lincoln. And when I started teaching in 1981, I taught for 23 years, students came out of high school prepared with the basics. We're a community college, okay? Students needed the basics to go on to train for further occupations, to be successful in life. They were doing it in 1981. But by the time I retired 23 years later, in fact, about 10 years before that, students were not coming in prepared. They couldn't write basic sentences. They couldn't speak coherently to express themselves. We were teaching them to go into human services fields. They needed to be able to do that. They needed to be able to figure out percentages. Many couldn't do that. As a result, Southeast Community College had to start offering remedial classes in English and mathematics so our students could get the basics. Nowhere any college should have to offer remedial classes. And I've said enough. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Miriam Nicola from Kearney, Nebraska, and I was gonna chicken out on speaking, but I got these books and I wanted to pass them out, so I can't. So I mean, I have to go on. Anyway, I was at the meeting in April, and there was a group of young people from Lincoln Public Schools. Let me see what it was called. Equity. Well, some. Lincoln Public Schools District Equity Cadre. And they were very well spoken and poised, but the words came out of their mouth, you know, equity, of course. And this lovely young lady's 8th grader, and she said systemic, but left out the racism part. And she said privilege, but left out the white part. So I just feel like these kids are being programmed to cause more division in our country. And yes, there has been racism, there is racism. But first of all, well, I teach young children in a Bible club. And I tell them every day, you are made in God's image, made to be a boy, made to be a girl in God's image. All people are made in the image of God. So these equity things are just causing more division, and we've had 200 years of people struggling against the racism of slavery. There were black people, white people, ex-slaves, all kinds of people. And then all the marches in the 60s and Martin Luther King. And all of this would just go to naught if we just keep the CRT. I think one of the goals of communism to destroy a free nation is to take advantage of divisions and raise up divisions. And this is bringing divisions. So anyway, this story, well, it's called, I don't know if this is working right, The Dream King by Will Ford and Matt Lockett. And one of Martin Luther, or part of his I Have a Dream speech, which I hadn't really read it till now because, I don't know, I just hadn't. But I have a dream that someday the sons of former slaves would be, or I forgot how he puts that, and the sons of former slave owners would be, he didn't say friends. I could open this up and look at it, but I don't think I have time. Maybe I do. So our nation was built on these lofty foundations that come from the scriptures, but we were, you know, brought up by imperfect people, but we have these goals, and that was his goal. Anyway, now I'm going to lose it. Okay. Anyway, this is the story of the descendant of a former slave and the descendant of a former slave owner. And their story crosses, it's amazing how it crosses. So I just recommend, if any of you want to read it, you can read it. And I'll pass them, or whoever wants them can have them.
Thank you, Miriam. That concludes our list.
We will now break for lunch. Agenda item 9.1 through 9.3. The next items are information items and written reports for the board and for our information only. Robin, is there a motion to go into executive session?
Yes, I move that the board. Yes, I move that the board go into executive session to discuss the commissioner's appraisal and to prevent needless injury to the reputation of an individual.
Is there a second? Second. Is there any discussion on this motion?
Just a question.
Yes.
We'll come back out of executive
Yeah, we
session
have to
and
come back.
finish with a good
Yep, we do. Okay, Andrea, please call the roll.
Stevens,
Yes.
Neary, Morrison, Kojons,
Yes.
Penner,
Yes.
Goebbels,
Yes.
Nichols,
Yes.
Fricky. Yes. 6 yes, 2 absent.
The motion passed. The board will now go into closed session to discuss the commissioner's appraisal and to prevent needless injury to the reputation of an individual. Is there a motion to come out of executive session?
So move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion on the motion? Andrea, please call the roll.
Goebbels,
Yes.
Neary, Kojons,
Yes.
Nichols,
Yes.
Fricky,
Yes.
Penner,
Yes.
Stevens,
Yes.
Morrison. 6 yes, 2 absent.
The motion passed. Is there anything for the good of the order?
Yes, Madam President.
Yes.
I wanted to remind or let all of you know that the NASB annual conference will be in Phoenix, October 26th through the 28th. You all should have received an email from Renee from NASB inviting you to complete a short summary. The conference planning committee is trying to find out what state board members are most interested in hearing about or learning about at the annual conference. It will take you maybe 5 minutes to complete. If you've not completed that, please do that and submit it. You can complete the survey. I think we have the close date of May 27th. At our next committee meeting next Monday, we'll be looking at preliminary results. One of the things we're trying to do this year is increase the response rate so that we really feel like we're hearing from a majority of state school board members. And then that information will be used to actually design some of the sessions for annual conference. I don't know exactly when, but in the near future, you'll also be receiving an invitation to submit session proposals. So if there's something as state board members that we believe we would like to present at the annual conference, there's an opportunity for us to submit a proposal and be able to do that if we are selected. So just want to kind of plant that as a seed. If you have questions about any of that, you can let me know.
Thank you, Patty. Yes, Robin.
Yeah, just on behalf of the 7th District, I know that we would want to say thank you to the Sandhills Convention Center, to the schools, the Catholic schools of North Platte, as well as the public school. Just saying thanks for coming out.
Thank you, Robin. Anything else for the good of the order? This meeting is adjourned.